Beneath our cities and seas lies a forgotten design, a pattern so vast it threads through myths, ruins, and stars alike. Ancient builders shaped stone with knowledge that defies time, aligning monuments to constellations only visible millennia ago. Who were they, travelers from the past, or from somewhere beyond the Earth itself? Each discovery blurs the line between history and legend, as if the ancients left us a puzzle written in stone, daring us to remember a truth too old, too impossible to fit within our history books. High on the windswept plains of Bolivia, near the southern shores of Lake Titicaca, lies a place so mysterious that even time itself seems hesitant to reveal its secrets. This is Tiahuanaco, or Tiwanaku, known by the Aymara people as the City of the Gods. Here, among the scattered ruins of monolithic gates and weathered statues, stand the silent witnesses of a civilization whose origins are lost in the fog of prehistory. No written record tells us who they were. No single culture today can fully claim them. Yet their stonework remains precise, intricate, and massive, raising the same haunting question that has echoed for more than a century. How old is Tiahuanaco really? If Tiahuanaco truly predates the Inca Empire, or even recorded human history, who do you think built the City of the Gods? Share your thoughts in the comments below. When archaeologists first began to study the site in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, they believed it was built around 500 years before Christ to 1,000 years after Christ, a remarkable period yet still within the reach of known Andean civilizations. But as the decades passed, deeper excavations, advanced geological surveys, and unexplainable erosion patterns began to tell a different story. Some researchers noticed that the Gate of the Sun, the site's most iconic structure, seemed far too weathered for a monument only 1,500 years old. The stone surfaces carved from a single 10-ton block of andesite showed erosion, consistent with many thousands of years of exposure to rain and wind. Others pointed out that the alignment of Tiahuanaco's main temples, particularly the Kalasasaya complex, matched an astronomical configuration that only would have occurred around 12,000 years ago. If true, that would mean Tiwanaku predates not only the Inca Empire, but even the dawn of recorded civilization itself. At the heart of this debate lies an astonishing possibility that Tiahuanaco was already ancient when the Incas were young. According to local legends, when the first Inca kings rose to power in the Cusco Valley, they referred to Tiwanaku as the work of the gods themselves. The mythic figure Viracocha, the great creator deity, was said to have emerged from Lake Titicaca after a global flood, bringing light and civilization to the world. He is often depicted on the gateway of the sun, his arms radiating like beams of energy, surrounded by strange winged figures and symbolic creatures. For centuries, the Aymara and Quechua peoples believed these images were not just artistic motifs, but the memories of a forgotten age when divine beings walked among men. The question of age is not just poetic, it is deeply scientific. Geologists studying the sedimentary layers beneath Tiahuanaco found that part of the site now rests on what was once the ancient shoreline of Lake Titicaca. The implication is staggering. The lake's water level would have been hundreds of meters higher at the time the first stones were placed. And such a level has not existed for at least 10,000 to 12,000 years, based on paleoclimate data. That means the builders of Tiahuanaco may have witnessed a completely different landscape when the region was lush and the air thicker long before the last ice age ended. Could Tiahuanaco be the last remnant of a pre-glacial civilization, wiped out by the same cataclysms that reshaped Earth's surface around 10,000 years before Christ? If this dating is correct, then Tiahuanaco would have stood as one of the oldest monumental complexes on the planet contemporary with Göbekli Tepe in Turkey and possibly older than the Egyptian pyramids. Yet its architecture displays an uncanny precision. Blocks weighing dozens of tons fit together with no mortar forming joints so perfect that even a razor blade cannot slide between them. How could a society of hunter-gatherers, supposedly existing at the end of the Ice Age, have possessed such advanced stone-cutting techniques, architectural understanding, and astronomical knowledge? To many, this suggests that Tiahuanaco was built not by primitive tribes, but by an advanced culture that vanished without trace, leaving only stone monuments as their signature. One of the most debated artifacts supporting this theory is the Ponce monolith, a towering statue carved from a single block of red sandstone standing nearly 3 meters tall. Its body is adorned with intricate geometric patterns, strange cup-like depressions, and symbols that some researchers interpret as a lost script. Others note similarities between these motifs and those found in faraway regions like Mesopotamia and Egypt, fueling speculation that Tiwanaku may have been part of a global network of early civilizations. But the most enigmatic of all remains the Bennett monolith El Fraile. Weighing around 20 tons, it depicts a humanoid figure holding 2 ceremonial objects with an expression that seems almost human, yet not quite. Erosion suggests it was carved thousands of years before the peak of the Tiwanaku culture. If this is true, the monolith could predate even the civilization traditionally credited for it. Adding to the mystery, some early explorers, such as Arthur Posnansky, an engineer and historian who dedicated decades to studying Tiahuanaco, proposed that the site was built around 15,000 years before Christ. His conclusions were based on astronomical alignments and the shifting of the Earth's axis. Though mainstream archaeology dismissed his estimates as exaggerated, later satellite data and astroarchaeological models surprisingly showed that some alignments indeed matched celestial events from over 10,000 years ago. Even modern archaeologists admit that the current dating system for Tiahuanaco, based on pottery and carbon samples, might only represent the latest phase of occupation, not the true beginning. Beneath the visible temples lie older foundations, some built from megalithic blocks so immense that their construction would have required technology far beyond what was thought possible for ancient Andean peoples. Could it be that Tiahuanaco was not a single creation, but a palimpsest of civilizations, each one building upon the ruins of another, stretching back into deep prehistory? Some local myths describe the site as having been destroyed and rebuilt multiple times after floods and cosmic events. The first people, it is said, were tall, pale-skinned beings who could command the elements. The Inca themselves later referred to them as the Viracocha's divine teachers, who vanished as mysteriously as they appeared. Whether these were gods, ancient engineers, or simply the remnants of a lost Andean culture, no one can say for certain. But one thing is clear: Tiwanaku does not fit neatly into our current timeline of human civilization. Today, Tiahuanaco still stands in silence, its colossal stones catching the same icy winds that have swept across the Andes for many thousands of years. The faces carved into those monoliths stare blankly toward the horizon, their meaning eroded but not forgotten. Scientists continue to probe the site with ground-penetrating radar satellite mapping and isotope analysis, uncovering layers of history that seem to defy logic. And as each new discovery pushes the possible date of origin further back in time, the mystery deepens. What if Tiwanaku is not merely an archaeological site, but a message from a forgotten epoch, a record of human or perhaps non-human achievement long before the official dawn of civilization? Perhaps the true story of Tiahuanaco is not just about who built it, but when and why it was built at all. Was it a temple aligned to the stars? a calendar of cosmic cycles, a monument to survival after a great cataclysm, or something far stranger, an outpost of an unknown culture that predated recorded history itself. Until the stones themselves speak, the enigma of Tiahuanaco will remain unsolved, standing timeless on the altiplano between heaven and earth, between myth and science. In the end, the question lingers: if Tiahuanaco truly dates back to 12,000 years ago, what does that say about the story of humanity itself? Maybe civilization did not begin where we think it did. Maybe we are only rediscovering what was once forgotten. Among the many mysteries of human evolution, few are as hauntingly beautiful and as scientifically confounding as the story of the Ainu people, the ancient bearded inhabitants of northern Japan. Their faces tell a story that does not fit easily into any racial category. Deep-set eyes, tall noses, wavy hair, and skin lighter than the East Asian norm. For centuries, scholars, explorers, and even early anthropologists have stood bewildered before these people, who, though living in Asia, appeared to bear the traits of Europe. But the question that has fascinated generations remains unanswered. Who were the Ainu, and where did they come from? What do you think about this? Could the mysterious European features of the Ainu be evidence that they came from a long-lost ancient civilization? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The mystery begins in Hokkaido, the northernmost island of Japan, where the Ainu have lived for millennia, isolated from the rest of the Japanese archipelago. When early Western travelers first encountered them in the 17th and 18th centuries, they described the Ainu with astonishment. Some called them the white people of the East, noting their long, often brown or auburn hair, thick beards, and light skin, which stood in sharp contrast to the smooth, dark-haired, mostly beardless Japanese and Chinese populations nearby. Their features seemed to belong to another world entirely. Were they an isolated remnant of some ancient Eurasian migration? A forgotten tribe that wandered east long before history began to be written? The physical features of the Ainu only deepened the enigma. Their faces were described as having deep-set eyes, strong brow ridges, and high-bridged noses, characteristics traditionally associated with Caucasoid populations of Western Eurasia. In contrast, most East Asian populations exhibit flatter facial planes and low nasal bridges. Even the men's famously full beards, rare in East Asia, appeared to connect them more to the people of Siberia, the Caucasus, or even Europe than to their Japanese neighbors. Yet despite these similarities, the Ainu's DNA tells a story far older and far stranger than a simple East-West mixture. Modern genetics has shown that the Ainu are not European, nor are they closely related to modern Japanese. Instead, they are the descendants of the Jomon people, one of the world's oldest known continuous populations, who inhabited the Japanese islands for over 13,000 years. The Jomon culture predates the Egyptian pyramids, the Mesopotamian cities, and the rise of Chinese civilization. They were hunter-gatherers, yet they created some of the earliest pottery on Earth, decorated with intricate cord-marked designs that still inspire awe today. When the Yayoi people migrated from the Asian mainland about 3,000 years ago, bringing with them wet rice agriculture and bronze tools, they gradually mixed with and displaced the Jomon. But in the far north, in the cold forests of Hokkaido, the descendants of the Jomon survived. These were the ancestors of the modern Ainu. Yet while this theory explains their long presence in Japan, it does not explain their European-like appearance. Anthropologists and geneticists alike have struggled to fit the Ainu into the conventional model of human migration in East Asia. Some of the earliest hypotheses suggested that the Ainu might have descended from a branch of ancient Eurasian hunter-gatherers, possibly connected to the Caucasus region or even western Siberia, who traveled eastward thousands of years ago. Others speculated that they might share ancestry with the Cro-Magnon-like populations of Paleolithic Europe, remnants of an ancient migration that predated the split between modern racial groups. But more recent DNA studies reveal something even more fascinating: the Ainu carry haplogroups found nowhere else in the modern world, such as Y-DNA, D1 or 2. This lineage is astonishingly ancient and is also found in isolated populations like the Andaman Islanders and Tibetan Highlanders. These groups are not closely related today, yet they share a common ancestry that reaches back tens of thousands of years long before the distinction between European and Asian even existed. In other words, the Ainu's European-like traits may not be a reflection of European ancestry at all. Instead, they could be a genetic echo from a time before the great human migrations, when early Homo sapiens spread out of Africa and diversified along many forgotten routes. The Ainu may represent a living fossil of a primordial humanity, carrying features that once were common across much of Eurasia but later disappeared as populations evolved and intermixed. Beyond their genetics, the Ainu's culture and language further separate them from every other people in East Asia. The Ainu language is a linguistic orphan. It has no known relatives. It is not related to Japanese, Korean, or any Altaic language. Some linguists have proposed distant similarities with the Nivk language of Siberia, or even with ancient Indo-European roots, but none of these theories have been proven. Their religion centers on nature worship, honoring the spirits of animals, trees, and fire. Among their most sacred rituals was the Iomante, the bear-sending ceremony in which a bear cub was raised and then ceremonially released to return its spirit to the gods. Such animistic beliefs and the reverence for animals are reminiscent of Paleolithic traditions, the kind of spirituality that may have once united humanity before organized religion took shape. Even their art and craftsmanship seem to whisper of an ancient world: carved wooden bear idols, embroidered robes, and elaborate tattoos around the lips of women, traditions unseen elsewhere in East Asia. These customs suggest that the Ainu preserved a cultural memory stretching back to the Stone Age, untouched by the agricultural revolutions that transformed most of humanity. Excavations across Japan have revealed thousands of Jomon-era artifacts, and strikingly, the faces molded in the clay figurines known as dogu resemble the Ainu more than any modern Japanese population. Their large eyes, broad noses, and full lips mirror Ainu physiognomy, strengthening the idea that the Ainu are indeed the last living heirs of this ancient civilization. These findings present a profound paradox. The Japanese archipelago, so closely associated today with East Asian genetics and culture, may have once been home to a completely different people, a civilization both older and genetically distinct, perhaps with connections that stretched from Siberia to ancient Europe. The European features of the Ainu may thus represent a lost chapter of human diversity, a genetic signature from a forgotten branch of Homo sapiens who once roamed the prehistoric world before the rise of modern nations and ethnic divides. In Japanese folklore, there are faint echoes of the Ainu's ancient presence. Some myths speak of people with white beards or northern gods who came long ago. Others describe divine beings teaching early humans the secrets of fire, and hunting tales that might once referred to Ainu ancestors. But as history moved forward, the Ainu's world began to fade. The arrival of Japanese settlers in Hokkaido during the Edo and Meiji periods brought displacement, assimilation, and cultural erasure. By the 20th century, the Ainu were officially declared assimilated, their language banned in schools, their traditions forbidden, and their very identity nearly erased. Today, only a few thousand Ainu people openly identify as such, though genetic studies suggest that millions of Japanese carry small traces of Ainu ancestry without even knowing it. Yet even as their visible presence dwindled, the mystery of their origin grew stronger. If the Ainu are indeed descendants of the world's oldest human lineage, their survival, however fragile, represents a priceless window into humanity's deep past. Their genes, faces, and traditions could hold clues about the earliest migrations of humankind, perhaps even the first wave of people who ever reached the Pacific Rim. Scientists still debate the true place of the Ainu people in human history. Were they the last survivors of the Stone Age, or simply the result of thousands of years of genetic isolation? The truth may lie somewhere in between. They may not be of European origin, yet they preserve features once common across the ancient world before humanity divided into different races. Their existence reminds us that human history is not a straight line, but rather a web of forgotten paths where the past still quietly breathes within the present. So who are the Ainu truly? Are they a lost branch of an ancient Eurasian race, the last echoes of the Jomon world, or the descendants of a civilization older than Japan itself? Perhaps the answer lies not in their resemblance to Europeans, but in the reminder that all humans share deeper roots than we realize, and that the faces of the Ainu may be showing us not an anomaly, but a mirror reflecting the forgotten origins of us all. In the heart of the Guatemalan jungle, amid dense trees and humid silence, there was once said to stand a colossal face carved from stone, serene, unfamiliar, and utterly out of place. Known today, the Stone Head of Guatemala, this mysterious monument has become one of the most controversial and haunting enigmas in the study of ancient civilizations. It is not simply because of its monumental scale or refined craftsmanship, but because the face it bore, calm, delicate, and distinctly non-native, did not resemble any culture known to have existed in the region. Its existence recorded in just a single faded photograph, and its disappearance soon after turned it from a remarkable archaeological find into a symbol of lost evidence, the kind that could have rewritten history, but instead slipped quietly into legend. What do you think really happened to the Stone Head of Guatemala? Was it the lost work of an ancient civilization, or just a story that time reshaped into legend? Share your thoughts and theories in the comments below. The story begins in the 1950s in the remote Payton region of Guatemala, an area where dense tropical forests hide the ruins of countless Mayan cities. Local explorers reported stumbling upon something unlike any Mayan structure, a massive stone head rising more than 6 meters above the forest floor. Its features were smooth, perfectly proportioned, and astonishingly lifelike. The eyes were closed, the lips calm, and the overall expression carried an air of quiet majesty, not the fierce stylized iconography typical of Mesoamerican art. There was no temple nearby, no carvings or hieroglyphs, and no trace of the tools used to create it. It simply stood alone, half buried in soil, and surrounded by thick vegetation, as if forgotten by both time and civilization. To those who saw it, the most striking thing was not its size, but its face. The sculpture bore no resemblance to the indigenous features found in the art of the Maya, the Olmecs, or the Aztecs. Instead, it looked almost European, with a high, narrow nose, thin lips, and fine, symmetrical proportions. Some described it as the face of a Greco-Roman god, others as a being from another world. This stylistic anomaly was so extreme that it challenged every established narrative of pre-Columbian art. If authentic, it would mean that some unknown people, thousands of years ago, had either reached Central America from afar or developed an artistic tradition entirely lost to time. For decades, the head was little more than a local legend until 1987, when a Guatemalan explorer and lawyer Dr. Oscar Rafael Padilla Lara announced that he had received a black-and-white photograph of the statue. The photo, he said, had been taken decades earlier, showing the head in profile with a man standing beside it for scale. The figure looked enormous, serene, and unmistakably non-Mayan. Padilla's photograph spread rapidly among researchers, sparking excitement and disbelief. Some saw in it the potential to rewrite chapters of human history. Others dismissed it as a hoax. But those who sought to verify the discovery would soon be met with a devastating revelation. When they finally reached the location, the statue was gone. According to reports, by the time investigators reached the site in the late 1980s, the region had become a battleground during Guatemala's civil conflict. Local villagers told them that the statue had been destroyed, its once majestic features shattered by gunfire and artillery practice from soldiers stationed nearby. The serene face that had endured centuries in silence had been reduced to rubble within a few years of being photographed. What remained were only fragments, small pieces of stone, too damaged to prove anything. With its destruction, the stone head of Guatemala crossed the line from archaeology into myth. The photograph became the only surviving trace of its existence. This is the heart of the mystery, and the reason the stone head remains one of the most haunting enigmas in archaeology. Unlike most ancient artifacts that can be revisited, studied, and verified, this one vanished before it could be understood. Because the monument no longer exists, every question about it hangs unanswered. Who carved it when it was made? What tools were used to create such perfect symmetry? And why the face looked unlike anything in Mesoamerican art? Most painfully of all, we will never know what knowledge died with it when it was destroyed. Its disappearance turned a potential historical breakthrough into a metaphor for all the wisdom humanity has lost, not to time, but to negligence, conflict, and disbelief. Had the statue survived, modern technology, like three-dimensional scanning or isotopic dating, could have revealed its secrets. Instead, all that remains is a single blurred photograph, a ghost of evidence, and the haunting sense that something extraordinary has been erased forever. The greatest mystery of the stone head is not what we know, but what we will never know. Without any physical evidence left, imagination has filled the void. Researchers, historians, and independent theorists have all tried to claim the stone head of Guatemala as proof for their own interpretations. Some believe it was merely a misidentified or weathered Olmec-style monument. Yet the Olmecs, though famous for their colossal heads, always depicted broad-faced figures with thick lips and flat noses, entirely unlike the refined and elongated features of the Guatemalan face. Others argue that the statue might represent evidence of pre-Columbian contact between the Old World and the Americas, suggesting that ancient travelers from the Mediterranean or the Middle East may have reached Central America thousands of years before Columbus. The distinctly European appearance of the carving, they say, hints at a long-lost exchange between distant civilizations. The most radical idea, however, claims the head was not of human origin at all, that it depicts a being from beyond this world, perhaps an ancient visitor whom early people immortalized in stone after witnessing something they could not explain. Supporters of this view point to the statue's calm, emotionless expression and its resemblance to the depictions of gods seen in ancient art across many continents. Each theory carries a strange logic of its own, yet none can be verified. Every explanation begins and ends with that missing piece of stone. The tragedy of the stone head is a familiar one in archaeology. Around the world, countless artifacts have been destroyed before they could be documented by war, looting, or simple neglect. Each loss narrows the window through which we can view our shared past. In the case of Guatemala's stone head, this loss feels especially cruel. If genuine, it could have provided vital insight into unknown migrations, forgotten artisans, or lost civilizations of Central America. But with the statue gone, so too vanished the opportunity to confirm or deny those possibilities. We are left instead with speculation and a single haunting photograph. That image, grainy and ghost-like, now circulates online as both evidence and illusion, blurring the boundary between what was and what might have been. Even though the physical monument no longer exists, the story endures, retold by researchers, historians, and dreamers alike. It reminds us that not all mysteries need to be proven to be meaningful. Sometimes their very absence invites us to question the limits of what we think we know. Somewhere in the forests of Peton, the earth may still hold fragments of that vanished face, hidden beneath roots and soil. And perhaps one day, another explorer will uncover them and give voice once more to the silent stone that looked like no one who should have existed there. Until then, the stone head of Guatemala remains what it has always been, a question carved in stone and erased by time. We often think history lives in books and museums, but the truest stories are the ones lost before we could read them, whispered through ruins and fading photographs. The stone head of Guatemala is one such story, a vanished monument that reminds us not only of the mysteries of ancient civilizations, but of our failure to protect them. Beneath its silence lies a truth we can't ignore sometimes. What we lose reveals more than what we find. Long before the pyramids rose and millennia before Stonehenge cast its first shadow, a circle of wood and earth was built in the heart of Germany. To the untrained eye, it's just a field, silent, unassuming. But to those who listen it, whispers of a forgotten intelligence of people who mapped the heavens 7,000 years ago with a precision that defies their time. This is the Göbekli Henge, Europe's oldest solar observatory, where ancient hands carved cosmic order into the soil. Who were these people who could measure the sun's path before writing even existed? And what knowledge did they possess that history has long since erased? Some say it was a calendar, others a temple. But perhaps it was something far greater, a message from the dawn of human consciousness, written not in words, but in light and shadow. What do you think the Göbekli Henge really was? A simple calendar, a sacred temple, or proof of a forgotten civilization? Share your thoughts in the comments below. In 1991, Göbekli was discovered through aerial photography, appearing as a faint ring beneath the soil, made up of 3 concentric circles, almost perfect in geometry. Archaeologists later found that these circles consisted of an outer ditch, a wooden palisade, and a central open area, all carefully aligned with the sun. The structure was built around 4,900 years before Christ, during the Neolithic era, long before writing the wheel or metal tools appeared in Europe. The people who lived here belonged to the linear pottery and stroke-ornamented pottery cultures, who dwelled in wooden huts, farmed and raised animals. So how could such early farming communities have created a structure of astonishing astronomical precision? That question still troubles archaeologists to this day. Excavations revealed 3 gates facing southeast, southwest, and north, and it quickly became clear that 2 of them aligned perfectly with the sunrise and sunset of the winter solstice. This could not have been by chance. The builders of Göbekli had mapped the sky. They knew the shortest day of the year, the moment when the sun reversed its course and the cycle of seasons began anew. In other words, Göbekli was a Neolithic solar calendar, a tool to mark the passing of time, signal the new year, and predict the seasons. To achieve this, they must have observed the sun for generations, tracking its position day after day, year after year, recording its shifting path along the horizon. Such long-term observation required not only patience, but also a system of transmitted knowledge, something that, according to Orthodox history, should not have existed at that time. And here lies the greatest enigma: who built Göbekli? And what did they know? Without writing, without metal tools or complex instruments, they created an observatory so precise it rivals monuments built thousands of years later. The Göbekli suggests that someone or some culture possessed astronomical knowledge far ahead of its time. Archaeologists usually attribute the site to Neolithic farmers of Central Europe, but that explanation remains unsatisfying. The precision of its alignments, the symmetry of its form, and the organizational capacity required to construct it imply a social and intellectual sophistication that should not have existed 49 centuries before Christ. Who were they? Were they isolated farmers who somehow discovered cosmic geometry on their own? Or were they heirs to a far older knowledge passed down from a civilization erased from memory? The theory of a forgotten astronomical civilization may sound mythical, yet it refuses to fade away. Across Europe, from Austria and Slovakia to Poland, more than 250 similar circular enclosures have been discovered, all aligned to the sun. It is as if there once existed a continent-wide network of ancient observatories sharing the same understanding older than recorded history itself. Could Göbekli be the oldest surviving outpost of that mysterious system? At the circle's center, archaeologists uncovered animal bones, pottery fragments, and even human skulls. Some bones bore marks of cutting and burning, evidence that ritual sacrifices once took place here. If Göbekli was a temple of the sun, it was also a place of blood and faith. During the winter solstice, when the sun was weakest, ancient people believed that light itself had to be fed to be reborn. Such offerings may have been acts of devotion to revive the dying sun, ensuring fertility and the return of life. This fusion of astronomy and religion is extraordinary. The builders of Göbekli were not mere farmers, they were cosmic thinkers, interpreting the universe through ritual geometry and sacrifice. To them, humanity, nature, and the heavens were a profound philosophy rarely attributed to the Neolithic world. Göbekli was not alone. Dozens of similar circular monuments called woodhenges or solar circles have been found across Central Europe, all built within a few centuries of one another. Their striking uniformity suggests communication and a shared purpose. These were not isolated tribes, but perhaps a cultural network united by belief, knowledge, and a solar calendar. Some scholars argue this was Europe's first organized religion, centered on the sun's cycle of death and rebirth. Others see it as evidence of an early scientific worldview where cosmic order was measured through observation rather than superstition. Yet there remains another far more mysterious possibility. If hundreds of such monuments were built almost identically across vast distances, could there have been a teacher civilization that passed down its knowledge of the star? The idea recalls Sumerian myths of sky-descending gods, Egyptian tales of Thoth, and Celtic legends of Druid astronomers. Perhaps Göbekli is Europe's echo of a global memory, the story of humanity's first skywatchers. Today, walking among the reconstructed wooden posts, it is difficult to grasp the monument's full magnitude. The air is still, as if the site itself holds the echoes of ancient prayers and the gaze of those who watched the horizon 7,000 years ago. Despite decades of research, its purpose remains elusive. What tools did they use to align the gates so precisely? Why would a small farming community devote such immense effort to a structure with no practical use unless they believed it connected them to the cosmos? Perhaps for the people of Göbekli, the circle was not simply a way to measure time, but a means to harmonize with the universe, to find order within the celestial dance of stars and light. Today, the site has been reconstructed in its original position, and during the winter solstice, visitors can still witness the sunrise through the eastern gate and the sunset through the western one, exactly as it happened 7 millennia ago. The moment when sunlight pierces the wooden walls and illuminates the inner circle is breathtaking. It reminds us that our ancestors were far from primitive. They too watched the heavens, followed the sun's path, and sought meaning in their existence just as we do today. The Göbekli Circle stands as a bridge between science and spirituality, between observation and faith. It embodies humanity's oldest instinct to seek meaning in the stars. The mystery endures. Who built the Göbekli? Were they simple farmers or guardians of forgotten knowledge? Their names vanished, their purpose unknown, yet their genius still glows through the Earth's design. They were dreamers, watching the heavens and building a circle that aligns with the sun even after millennia. In silence, they left a message written not in words, but in light and shadow, that humanity's search for the cosmos began far earlier and deeper than we imagine. Across the misty valleys of Europe, deep within forests and mountain passes, there exist bridges so old and so perfectly built that they almost seem unnatural. They are known by one haunting name, shared across languages and borders: the Devil's Bridge. Whether in Germany, France, Italy, or Switzerland, each of these ancient stone arcs carries the same echoing legend that no human alone could have built them. From afar, they appear as graceful stone curves linking earth and air. But as you walk closer, something feels off. The symmetry is too exact, the alignment too flawless, the stones too heavy for the tools that people of the Middle Ages supposedly had. Many of these bridges were built between the 12th and 14th centuries, long before advanced engineering, yet their forms rival the precision of modern architecture. How then did such perfection arise from hands wielding only chisels and ropes? One of the most breathtaking examples lies in Saxony, Germany, Rakotbrücke, often called the Bridge of the Devil. Its slender arc stretches over a small mirror-like lake. When the wind stills and the surface turns to glass, the reflection below merges seamlessly with the arch above, forming a perfect unbroken circle. It looks less like a structure and more like a portal, a doorway into another world. No wonder travelers believe the devil himself must have guided its builders, for how else could stone bend into such geometric perfection? The legend repeats itself across Europe. In France, Pont du Diable stands carved into sheer cliffs defying gravity. In Switzerland, Teufelsbrücke crosses a raging alpine gorge, each stone locked in balance despite centuries of avalanches and storms. In Wales, Pontafenach clings to its mountainside like a sculpture more than a bridge. And everywhere the story is eerily similar: a desperate builder, a pact with the devil, and a clever human trick that saves a soul but leaves a mystery behind. Yet among all these tales, one question has never faded. Why do these bridges look so impossibly precise? Their geometry, materials, and positioning continue to baffle modern architects and historians alike. If you stood before Rakotbrücke and saw its reflection forming that flawless circle, would you call it a marvel of human art, or a trace of something unearthly? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Most medieval bridges were functional, sturdy, uneven, sometimes crude. But the Devil's Bridges are different. Their arches are so mathematically exact that even today, engineers struggle to recreate their curvature using the crude technology available 800 years ago. Some are almost semicircular, others form ellipses so perfect that they align with the riverbanks at equal angles, something that should have required advanced calculation or templates that simply didn't exist. Rakotbrücke's symmetry is particularly puzzling. Its construction stones are not local. They come from quarries dozens of kilometers away. Each basalt column was carefully arranged to create not only an arch, but a reflection illusion, the circle that appears only under certain light. How could medieval stonemasons predict the optical behavior of light and water? Or was the design accidental, a coincidence so rare that it feels supernatural? Equally strange is the weight distribution. Many of these bridges are built without mortar, using a dry fit technique where gravity alone holds every block in place. The precision needed for this is immense. One misaligned stone, and the entire arch collapses. Yet these bridges have endured for centuries, surviving floods, earthquakes, and wars. Some geologists have examined the structures and found minute wedge cuts between the stones, as if the builders used a technique akin to modern pressure locking systems. But such methods were unknown in medieval Europe. It leads some researchers to suspect that knowledge from older forgotten civilizations, Roman or perhaps even pre-Roman, was reused and mythologized over time. Still, local legends offer a simpler answer: no man could have done it unless the devil helped. The term unnatural in the Devil's Bridge doesn't refer to anything monstrous or chaotic. On the contrary, it's the unnerving perfection that makes it feel beyond human. The exact curvature, the alignment with the sun, and the balanced ratio between height and span all follow principles of sacred geometry, the same mathematical harmony found in Gothic cathedrals and ancient temples. In Rakotsbrücke, the ratio between the height of the arch and the width of the lake mirrors the golden ratio phi, a proportion long associated with divine perfection. But medieval builders didn't typically apply such ratios to small-scale bridges. Some art historians argue that this knowledge could have come from esoteric traditions, secret guilds of stonemasons who encoded geometry into their works, geometry that medieval people, unable to explain, attributed to demonic power. Perhaps the most iconic image of all is the reflection of Rakotsbrücke forming a perfect ring. When sunlight hits the water at just the right angle, the bridge's stone arc becomes a glowing circle, a shape long associated with portals, eternity, and divine gateways in ancient symbolism. Some early travelers claimed that standing in the center of the bridge's reflection at dawn could open a doorway to another realm. Whether coincidence or not, this optical illusion transforms stone into myth. Photographers from around the world travel to capture that single still moment when earth, water, and sky align as one, a fleeting perfection that feels more magical than architectural. The legend tells that when the builder failed to complete the bridge, the devil appeared, offering help in exchange for the soul of the first creature to cross. The bridge was finished in a single night, so perfect it seemed unreal. But when the time came to pay, the builder tricked the devil by sending a dog across first. Furious at being deceived, the devil vanished, leaving the bridge behind as an eternal symbol of human ingenuity and the mysterious price of perfection. What makes the Devil's Bridge legend even more mysterious is its ubiquity. Nearly every European country has one, from the Alps to the Pyrenees, from Wales to the Balkans. How could such a specific story spread across so many cultures and languages long before mass communication existed? Some folklorists believe it reflects an ancient archetype, a collective recognition of the supernatural in human craftsmanship. Others suspect it may trace back to pagan myths of river deities, where bridges were seen as sacred crossings between worlds, thus requiring offerings or sacrifices. Today, scientists can model their geometry and simulate their load-bearing properties. They can even prove that such structures were possible with skill, patience, and time. But what they cannot replicate is the feeling, the eerie sense that these bridges do not quite belong to this world. Visitors often describe a chill in the air, a silence that deepens as you step onto the stone, as if the landscape itself holds its breath. Even without believing in demons or ancient magic, one cannot deny that the Devil's Bridges touch something primal within us, that awe of perfection, so absolute it feels supernatural. Centuries later, these bridges remain standing weathered but unbroken, a testament to human genius, or perhaps to something beyond it. Artists and filmmakers use them as symbols of temptation, transition, and forbidden beauty. To walk across one is to step between eras, between myth and matter. Their stones may be silent, but their geometry continues to whisper a question as old as the legend itself. Were they truly built by men, or by something that understood perfection better than we ever could? The Egtved girl's origin is not merely the story of a breathtaking grave in the Danish countryside. It is a mirror held up to the Nordic Bronze Age, where trade networks, sun rituals, and quiet political marriages wove together. A Europe that was already globalized more than 3 millennia ago. In 1921, at the burial mound in the village of Egtved, a sealed oak coffin was opened. Inside lay a girl of about 16 to 18 curled on a cowhide, wrapped in a woolen blanket, wearing a woven wool cap, a distinctive string skirt, and a bronze belt, with a spiral disc placed over the navel symbols of the sun cycles and fertility. The scene felt like a ritual frozen at its final second. Every detail from strands of hair to fingernail fragments remained, while the skeleton had been dissolved by acidic soil, leaving a paradox: soft tissues persisted, hard tissues vanished. Beside her were a birch bark container with residues of a fermented drink made from honey grains and wild berries, bronze pins, small bells, and most striking, the cremated remains of a child. Each object is a fragment of a story, yet together they still cannot answer the greatest question: who was she, and why did she die so far from home? What do you think truly happened to the Egtved girl? Was she a priestess chosen for a sacred sun ritual, a diplomatic bride sent far from home, or simply a young woman whose death became legend through time? Share your theory in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you believe her story really was. Modern science traced the clues on her very body. Strontium isotopes in her hair nails and tooth enamel assert something hard to refute. She was not born on the Jutland Peninsula. The isotope values fit the forested uplands of southern Germany, possibly the Black Forest or adjacent ore-rich zones where bronze working and metal artistry thrived. Her hair, about 23 centimeters long, reads like an 18-month diary, the segments nearest the scalp record where she lived in the weeks before death. The distal segments preserve a pattern of at least 3 journeys between distinct regions. In a world we often imagine as local, slow-closed, the Egtved girl lived a mobile cross-border life, a living link within the go-and-come exchange web of Bronze Age Europe. For this reason, the Egtved grave resembles a ritual stage. The fetal-like posture, the bronze disc set at the body's solar center, the string skirt designed to sway with dance, and the fermented drink evoke seasonal festivals or rites of passage. Twin spirals, concentric circles, and paths of light all are the language of the Nordic sun cult, kin to sun chariots, rock carvings, and spiral bronze motifs. Was she a ritual dancer, a priestess carrying the sun disk between seats of power, or a diplomatic bride chosen to unite a southern and a northern community through marriage, turning her body into a living covenant between economies and creeds? These anthropology politics hypotheses sharpen when we look at materials and craft in the grave. Fine woven wool, a well-made bronze belt, and a carefully brewed drink imply systems of production, storage, and exchange. They speak of amber tin ideas and symbols networks around her, where leaders ruled not just by force, but by ritual and performance. In such a setting, a Moon Age maiden could be a symbol of fertility, rebirth, a diplomatic envoy, and the chosen one of a seasonal rite. If so, her death, sudden or appointed, could become a community event demanding a perfect ceremony. The Egtved mound thus becomes a declaration. We are wealthy, interconnected, and faithful enough to the sun to send a person back to the eternal cycle of light. Yet at a deeper level, the unanswered mystery remains the story's spine. Who was she? If a southern chieftain's daughter, why was she buried in the north with such honor? If a priestess, why is the ritual kit so minimal? Do the child's cremated remains mark kinship loss or sacrifice? Isotope, data, show back and forth movement? Why then end in Egjitived rather than a southern center? Did she carry an illness from elsewhere and die far from home? Or did she truly sacrifice herself in a seasonal rite where death unlocks a new cycle of fertility? None of this yields firm answers, for each object opens 2 or 3 interpretive paths, while the skeleton, the sharpest instrument of medical reading, has been taken by the acidic earth. Gazing at the spiral bronze disc, many scholars invoke the nervous system of sun religion rotation, motion rhythm. The short string skirt, unlike other garments of the time, seems made for a moving body strings. Flutter, bronze, catches light, drum beats, and tiny bells seal the ritual cadence. Picture her appearing in the amber glow of a summer evening. The spiral flashing the village gathered. This rite did not only do something for the gods, it also performed power and projected order for the community. In that performance, the personal self dissolves into the collective symbol. She is no longer a person, but a breathing sun, a speaking harvest. Even so, the performance does not explain the ending. She died very young. No violent injuries are recorded. The skeleton is gone, no poison formula in the vessel, no written record. We can only read dim signals: a festive drink, a child's ashes, multi-stage travel quality, textiles, bright metal. Perhaps an infectious disease after journeys, perhaps a ritual mishap, perhaps simply the randomness of mortality in a harsh age. But why was she buried with such investment? Likely because in a ritual-centric society, the death of a bearer of symbols must be returned to cosmic order by an exemplary rite: cowhide wrapping the body bronze disc at the navel, the string skirt like a frozen flame, and the oak coffin like a seed husk pressed into the earth. Science draws us closer, yet also reminds us of limits. Isotopes reveal coordinates of life, not social status. Hair stores, itineraries, not names. Artifacts teach the grammar of a culture, not the subject of the sentence. Thus, every hypothesis, diplomatic bride, sun priestess, ritual, dancer, political hostage, may each be partly true, for she could have played many roles in a social fabric where belief, economy, and politics are 3 faces of one coin. Her far-from-home death, in that lens, is the intersection of lines, an individual torn by the tensions of a network in a strange place, then ritually reassembled into a beautiful narrative, the one we are still telling. Perhaps it is this beauty that keeps the mystery alive. The Egjitived mound preserves not only a girl, it preserves human ambition to bridge the finite and the eternal. Today, whenever we look at the spinning bronze disc, the little sun on the belly of a maiden who has slept for 3,400 years, we find ourselves asking the old questions: who are we in the world's web, whence power, swords, and wealth, or ritual and meaning we agree upon? And like all fine archaeological tales, the unknown keeps us returning again and again to reread hair strands, lees, and bronze motifs, hoping for a new clue. Perhaps the destination is not the answer, but the journey. Seeing how an unnamed Bronze Age girl crossed a continent was cherished, trusted, and laid to rest. Thus, the Egjitived girl's origin is in the end the origin of a symbol of long-distance connection between north and south, of the power of ritual over harvests and sky, and of the mystery of a lost name. Who was she? The answer may have been taken by acidic soil along with her bones. But why did she die far from home? Perhaps because she belonged to a homeland larger than where she was born, a homeland of roads where the sun's path left isotope streaks in her hair like a map, and left within us a question that never goes out. There are moments in archaeology when a discovery feels less like unearthing the past and more like disturbing a sleeping ghost. Along the rugged coasts of Maine, Labrador, and Newfoundland, scientists began uncovering graves stained deep crimson, not by nature, but by human hands. The soil was drenched in red ochre, the tools still glimmered with traces of pigment, and every stone shell and bone seemed to bleed with memory. They called them the Red Paint People, a name as haunting as the culture itself. What do you think really happened to the Red Paint People? Did they vanish, or did they return to the sea they worshipped? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your theory. More than 5,000 years ago, long before the pyramids rose or Stonehenge was aligned to the stars, a seafaring people thrived along the icy Atlantic coast of North America. They hunted whales and seals, fished the cold waters, and traveled great distances by boat, an extraordinary feat for a Stone Age culture. Yet what made them unforgettable was not their tools or dwellings, but their rituals of death. Their graves were painted with a thick layer of red ochre powdered hematite, as if every burial was a symbolic return to blood, to life, to the sea that had nourished them. Archaeologists unearthed hundreds of such tombs, all glowing with the same deep red, leading to the haunting title, the Red Paint People. But this wasn't a simple tradition. It was a language of color, a belief system where death was not an end, but a rebirth wrapped in red. Everything about their way of life points to a maritime culture far ahead of its time. The Red Paint People crafted fish hooks, harpoons, adzes, and axes from polished stone. They carved effigies of birds, whales, and sea creatures, symbols that may have represented their spiritual connection to the ocean. Unlike many early North American cultures that lived inland, they built their settlements facing the sea, not turning their backs on it. Archaeologists found campsites on ancient shorelines, now miles inland, due to changes in sea level, proving their close relationship with the tides. Their economy revolved around marine hunting whales, walruses, swordfish, and seals, animals that even today are difficult to capture. They weren't mere coastal wanderers. They were ocean navigators, people who had mastered the waves long before history recorded any sailors in the Americas. Yet the more researchers dug, the more unsettling the discoveries became. Many of the red-painted burials contained no human remains at all, only tools, ornaments, and that omnipresent red dust. No bones, no skeletons, just the ritual. Why would a people bury nothing but symbols? One theory suggests that bodies were placed at sea, offered back to the ocean gods in a ceremonial farewell. The ochre left on land could have been a marker of their spiritual presence, a symbolic tomb for those who now belonged to the deep. Another theory is more scientific. The acidic soil of the region may have dissolved the bones entirely, leaving only the pigment that resisted time. But even that doesn't fully explain the precision, the pattern, or the sacred consistency of these burials. The Red Paint People were not performing random rituals. They were following a codified religion, something deeply spiritual and universal among their communities across vast distances. Archaeologists studying the Red Paint People often pause at one haunting clue: the carved symbols left behind on stone and bone. These are not random decorations. They repeat with deliberate precision: spirals, like whirlpools, flowing waves, long-beaked birds, soaring over imagined seas, and faces that blur the line between human and spirit. No written language has ever been found, yet these motifs seem to whisper a message across millennia, a sacred code tied to the ocean itself. To them, the sea was not just home, but the womb of creation and the gateway to eternity. Every carved wave or bird might represent a soul's voyage through the currents of life and death, returning at last to the deep. And when they covered their dead in red ochre, it was likely a ritual of passage preparing them to sail across that endless silent ocean beneath the horizon of time. And then suddenly they vanished. Around 3,000 years ago, the red paint people disappeared from the archaeological record. Their tools stopped appearing in excavations, their red ochre burials ceased, and their settlements turned to silence. No signs of warfare, no mass graves, no catastrophic event preserved in the soil. It was as if they simply walked into the sea and never came back. What happened to them? That question has haunted archaeologists for nearly a century. One of the leading theories points to climate change. As the climate cooled sharply in the North Atlantic around 1,000 years before Christ, ocean currents shifted. Fish and seals migrated elsewhere. The ice thickened. A once bountiful coastline turned harsh and unlivable. For a people whose identity and survival depended on the sea, such a change would have been catastrophic. Perhaps they were forced to migrate inland, abandoning their maritime life and slowly blending into new tribes farther south. In that case, the red paint people didn't truly vanish, they transformed, becoming the silent ancestors of later Native American coastal cultures. But others believe the answer is far more mysterious. Archaeologists have noted uncanny similarities between artifacts of the red paint people and those found across the Atlantic in Scandinavia and Northern Europe. The shapes of their tools, the burial rituals using red ochre, even the sea-oriented lifestyle, all mirror aspects of Neolithic European maritime cultures. Could it be that the red paint people were early transatlantic voyagers who crossed the ocean thousands of years before the Vikings? If so, perhaps they didn't vanish at all. They simply returned home, leaving their crimson-marked memories along the American coast. And yet there is another possibility, the most poetic and the most chilling. What if their disappearance was not an exodus or extinction, but a choice? A people who lived by the sea worshipped the sea and painted their dead as if baptizing them in its blood. Perhaps in the end, they chose to give themselves back to the very element that had defined their existence. The sea that birthed them, fed them, and guided their beliefs might have been the final destination, a sacred return to the depths. Their graves, empty of bodies, yet filled with red ochre, could be a message left for us that their spirit had gone where we cannot follow, to the world beneath the waves. The red paint people left no cities or writing, yet their spirit endures. Every crimson grave is a silent testimony to a people who found divinity in color and the sea. Their use of red ochre spread across North America, echoing through later coastal myths about the people of the red sand. Perhaps these tales are not legends, but memories, the last whisper of a civilization that refused to fade. The red paint. People may have vanished from the land, yet their spirit endures in the red-stained soil, the whispering waves, and the fading light of the sea they once called home. Perhaps they were never lost, only transformed, returning to the ocean that birthed them. When the sun dips below the horizon and the water glows crimson, it feels as if they are still there, watching, waiting, and remembering. Have you ever stood before something so precise, so impossibly perfect, that it felt like nature couldn't have done it alone? Along the storm-beaten coast of Northern Ireland lies such a place. The Giant's Causeway, a vast mosaic of over 4,000 interlocking basalt columns rising from the ocean like a staircase to another world. Each column fits seamlessly into the next, forming a geometric landscape that looks engineered rather than born of chaos. To the Irish, it was the work of giants, the legendary Finn McCool, who built a bridge across the sea to Scotland. To scientists, it's a geological miracle, a frozen symphony of lava and time. But to everyone who stands upon those cold stones, feeling the Atlantic roar around them, one question refuses to fade. Was this masterpiece truly shaped by nature, or by something far greater? Was the Giant's Causeway truly nature's creation, or could it be evidence of something beyond our understanding? Share your thoughts and theories in the comments below. I'd love to hear how you see this mystery. Millions of years ago, during the Paleogene period, this region was covered by molten lava from ancient volcanic eruptions. When the lava met the cold sea, it cooled and contracted, forming cracks. These cracks, according to geological theory, divided the basalt into polygonal blocks, mostly hexagons tightly fitted together like a massive stone pavement. That explanation is widely accepted. Yet when one looks at the near-mechanical precision of tens of thousands of columns, it's hard to believe this is just natural coincidence. Each column is aligned with astonishing accuracy, its flat surfaces perfectly joined as if molded by the hands of a master engineer. The ancient Irish sensed something extraordinary here long ago. In their mythology, the Giant's Causeway wasn't a product of nature, but the work of Finn McCool, a giant hero of Celtic legend. With his superhuman strength, Finn built a stone bridge across the sea to challenge his Scottish rival, Benandona. But upon realizing Benandona was even larger, Finn's clever wife disguised him as a giant baby. When Benandona saw the enormous infant asleep, he panicked, imagining the size of its father, and fled, destroying the bridge behind him. According to legend, the remnants of that bridge are the Giant's Causeway in Ireland and Fingal's Cave in Scotland, two places with eerily identical basalt formations. Modern science later confirmed that Fingal's Cave truly exists on the Isle of Staffa in Scotland, and its geological structure is virtually identical to that of the Giant's Causeway. Both are composed of ancient basalt flows with perfectly formed hexagonal columns, the same crystallization pattern, mineral composition, and even geological age. How could two locations, separated by hundreds of kilometers, look so identical? The geological explanation suggests they were once part of a single vast lava flow stretching beneath the North Channel millions of years ago. But could there be more to it? Some alternative researchers propose that these are remnants of a sunken structure, perhaps a true ancient pathway connecting the two lands before the sea rose. The idea blurs the line between science and myth. When you look closely at the Giant's Causeway, one detail immediately stands out: the astonishing uniformity of its hexagonal columns. Out of more than 40,000 pillars, the vast majority share the same six-sided shape, the same tilt, and nearly identical dimensions, as if they were carved from a single mold. Across cultures and civilizations, the hexagon has symbolized balance, unity, and perfection, from honeycombs to crystal lattices. But how could molten rock cooling chaotically beneath the earth produce such mathematical order? Scientists suggest that as the lava cooled, it contracted and cracked under even pressure, forming hexagons like drying mud. Yet even the most advanced computer simulations struggled to recreate the flawless geometry seen here. Some researchers quietly wonder, is the hexagon simply the most efficient form nature can achieve, or could it hint at a deeper organizing intelligence woven into the very laws of the planet itself? Visitors often describe unusual sensations at the site. When strong winds sweep through the cracks, deep resonant sounds echo like footsteps or low music. Waves striking the shore create haunting reverberations, leading some to believe the area emits a subtle vibrational energy. Sensitive people claim to feel chills or vibrations, as though the stones themselves retain ancient power. Science has yet to confirm such effects, but this mysterious atmosphere gives the causeway an almost sacred, otherworldly presence. Among all theories surrounding the Giant's Causeway, none is as provocative as the idea that it might be the remnant of a vanished civilization, perhaps even connected to the myth of Atlantis. Supporters of this hypothesis point to the breathtaking geometric precision of the basalt columns, their flawless symmetry, repeating hexagonal patterns, and the way they interlock like engineered tiles. They argue that such perfection could hardly be accidental. Some claim the site once formed part of a vast bridge or coastal structure built by an unknown culture that disappeared beneath the ocean after cataclysmic events. Geological surveys of the North Atlantic have even revealed formations eerily similar to those in Ireland, feeding speculation that these could be fragments of a once continuous landmass. While mainstream science attributes everything to volcanic activity, the sheer order and design of the causeway make others wonder, are we truly looking at a natural phenomenon or the silent legacy of builders long erased from history? Around the world, there are other examples of columnar basalt, yet few match the scale and perfection of the Giant's Causeway. From a geological standpoint, it is an exquisite example of columnar jointing. From a philosophical perspective, it raises a profound question. Can the universe create such symmetry purely by chance, or does an intentional creative force lie behind it? Perhaps this is a place where nature and intelligence merge, where time and cosmic energy together sculpted a wonder beyond comprehension. Archaeologists have discovered fossil traces and mineral deposits on some columns, suggesting the area once teemed with life. Other hypotheses link the causeway's formation to major geological cycles, meteor impacts, or sudden crustal shifts in Earth's surface. Yet to this day, no evidence fully explains how tens of thousands of columns achieved such flawless symmetry and alignment. Standing among the path of giants facing the vast Atlantic, one feels the grandeur and mystery of this place. The dark, silent stones stand like ancient sentinels, guarding a secret that time refuses to reveal. Science may explain much, but something about the Giant's Causeway defies pure logic. It is both a testament to the power of nature and a reminder that there are mysteries humanity has yet to solve. And so the question still echoes with every wave that crashes upon the stones: who or what truly created the Giant's Causeway? Was it the hand of nature, of the gods, or of a forgotten civilization? Perhaps it is the uncertainty itself that makes it one of the greatest enigmas on Earth, where every stone tells a story of power myth and the fragile line between the natural and the supernatural. And when you stand upon those cold hexagonal columns, feeling the sea wind and hearing the whisper of waves, you might find yourself wondering, were the giants ever truly just a legend, or did they once walk this very path? Across the misty highlands of northern Scotland, scattered among fields, hills, and coastal cliffs, stand hundreds of ancient stones, carved by a civilization that vanished more than 1,000 years ago, the Picts. These monoliths, known as the Pictish stones, are among the most mysterious artifacts of early medieval Europe. Covered with strange symbols, spirals, fish mirrors, beasts, crescent moons, and key patterns, they whisper of a forgotten language, a code that no one has ever managed to read. For more than a century, scholars, linguists, and archaeologists have tried to unlock their meaning. Yet like sentinels of a lost world, the stones remain silent. Do you think the strange symbols on the Pictish stones are a real language or just religious art? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The Picts were first recorded by Roman historians around the 3rd century AD. They were described as the Picti, the painted people, perhaps because they tattooed or painted their bodies with bright blue pigment. Living in what is now northern Scotland, they resisted the Roman invasion, retreating into the rugged lands beyond Hadrian's Wall. But even as the Romans left Britain, the Picts continued to thrive, leaving behind a legacy that defied time. That legacy is written not on parchment, but on stone, a language of symbols carved into the heart of their land. When the first Pictish stones were discovered, archaeologists assumed they were simply decorative or commemorative. Yet as more were unearthed, over 300 in total patterns began to emerge. The same motifs appeared again and again, a crescent intersected by a V-rod, a double disc connected by a bar, a mirror paired with a comb, stylized animals with curling tails and impossible anatomy. These weren't random carvings. They were deliberate, consistent, and encoded with meaning. Each stone was like a page torn from a vast vanished book. The mystery lies in the fact that the Picts left no written records, no chronicles, no legends, no explanations. Their symbols appear on grave markers, boundary stones, and even in churchyards later occupied by Christian communities. Yet the system doesn't match any known script. Linguists have studied their frequency structure and placement, comparing them to hieroglyphs, runes, and Ogham inscriptions. Still, no one can say with certainty what they mean. Were they names, clan emblems, religious icons? Or perhaps something even deeper, a form of proto-writing, an ancient visual code that predated written language in Scotland? The crescent and V-rod symbol, for instance, is among the most recurring. Some believe it represents the moon, and a broken spear, symbolizing death or transformation. Others think it's a celestial map, aligning with specific constellations visible in the northern sky. The mirror and comb might symbolize femininity, status, or preparation for the afterlife, yet it appears on stones marking both men and women. The double disc and Z-rod remains one of the most puzzling. To some, it's a representation of balance or duality. To others, a reference to solar and lunar cycles. Each theory opens new doors, but closes none. What makes the enigma even greater is the sophistication of the carvings. Many were etched with astonishing precision into granite and sandstone materials notoriously difficult to shape. The lines are shallow, yet perfectly even, with smooth curvature that suggests not only skill, but planning. Perhaps even tools of metal, finer than we expect from the 6th to 8th centuries. In some cases, the carving technique seems so refined that modern sculptors struggle to reproduce it with hand tools. Could the Picts have possessed a level of craftsmanship or technology beyond what history attributes to them? The stones themselves are divided into 3 main classes. The earliest ones, Class 1, are unshaped boulders, with symbols incised directly onto their surface, often with animal forms such as salmon, boar, or mythical beasts. Class 2 stones, dating to the Christian period, are shaped slabs bearing both Pictish symbols and intricate crosses, a fascinating blend of pagan and Christian iconography suggesting a culture in transition. Finally, Class 3 stones carved after Christianization drop the old symbols altogether, reflecting how the Pictish identity began to dissolve into that of the emerging Scottish kingdom. Yet even as their people faded from record, their language of symbols persisted in stone. Many of the Pictish stones stand in haunting isolation on hilltops, near rivers, or beside forgotten roads. Some scholars suggest they marked territorial boundaries or served as political monuments proclaiming alliances or victories. Others argue they were ritual markers connected to burial sites or sacred landscapes. Yet the consistency of the symbols implies something more structured, perhaps a symbolic language only the Pictish elite could read. The repetition of certain symbol pairs, like mirror and comb or crescent and rod, hints at a grammar and intentional syntax. Could this be one of the earliest lost writing systems of Europe, a stone code that vanished before it could evolve into full literacy? Modern technology has breathed new life into the study of these stones. 3D scanning, photogrammetry, and digital enhancement have revealed previously unseen details. Faint lines, erased symbols, and layered carvings beneath the surface. Some stones even show evidence of having been recarved, as if the same surface was reused across generations, the symbols updating like inscriptions on a living document. Yet even with these advances, the message remains undeciphered. In 2021, A team of data scientists from the University of Aberdeen applied statistical linguistics to the symbols, analyzing the frequency and sequence of each motif. They discovered patterns similar to those found in real languages, suggesting that Pictish symbols weren't just decorative but communicative. However, without a bilingual text, a Rosetta Stone equivalent, decoding their meaning is nearly impossible. It's as though the key to their world has been buried forever beneath the mists of time. Adding to the enigma, several Pictish stones depict creatures that defy natural explanation. One recurring image, the so-called Pictish beast, has features unlike any known animal, a long snout, flipper-like limbs, and a curling tail. Some see in it a stylized dolphin, others a dragon, or perhaps a creature from Pictish mythology. To many, it symbolizes the unseen world that the Picts believed surrounded their own, a realm of spirits, ancestors, and gods. Whatever it represents, it reminds us that these people viewed the world through a lens utterly different from ours. Over time, Christianity absorbed and reshaped the Pictish tradition. Monks carved crosses over older pagan stones, blending the old and new beliefs. Yet the symbols endured, sometimes hidden behind the cross, sometimes standing beside it, as if two faiths coexisted on the same slab of stone. The stones became bridges between worlds, pagan to Christian, mortal to divine, known to unknown. Even now, as tourists and archaeologists wander the fields of Aberdeenshire or the coast of Moray, the stones stand like frozen thoughts, untouched, undeciphered, eternal. They remind us that history is not only written in words, but also in silence, and that silence can be louder than any record. Each symbol is a question carved in stone, each line a whisper from a people who once painted their bodies and their beliefs upon the land. Perhaps one day we'll finally crack their code, find that single artifact, that bilingual clue that lets the stones speak again. But until then, the Pictish stones remain one of the greatest unsolved linguistic and cultural mysteries of Europe. They are not just relics of art or faith, they are messages in a forgotten language written by hands that knew their meaning but took it to the grave. And so the stones wait, weathered by centuries of rain and wind, yet still standing still, holding secrets. Beneath their carvings lies not just the history of a people, but the haunting possibility that an entire language, a worldview, and a civilization can vanish, leaving behind only symbols and silence. Under the dry skies of the small town of Acambaro, located in Guanajuato, central Mexico, during the summer of 1944, a seemingly random discovery ignited one of the most controversial archaeological mysteries of the 20th century. A German merchant named Waldemar Julsrud, while riding his horse along the slopes of El Toro Hill, noticed several ceramic fragments protruding from the ground. When he ordered further excavation, he unexpectedly uncovered a treasure trove of over 30,000 clay figurines, a bizarre collection that to this day no one can definitively identify in terms of origin, age, or true purpose. Among these tens of thousands of artifacts were figures that shocked scientists around the world, statues depicting humans living alongside dinosaurs. What do you think? Could these figurines really be proof that humans once lived alongside dinosaurs, or are they just an elaborate hoax? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your theory. The Acambaro figures are not ordinary clay figurines. They depict an utterly unimaginable world, gigantic scaled creatures with long tails, sharp teeth, and strangely familiar postures identical to the dinosaurs that modern science only began reconstructing in the 19th century. On many of the statues, humans are shown riding, hunting, or coexisting with ancient beasts as if both species once shared the same planet. One sculpture portrays a man thrusting a spear into a two-legged dinosaur, Another shows a woman cradling the egg of a massive creature resembling a triceratops, and yet another depicts a child riding atop a crested lizard. To many, these pieces are evidence of an impossible yet thrilling notion that humans and dinosaurs once coexisted. How could ancient Mexicans, if they were indeed the creators, have depicted such anatomically accurate creatures that vanished tens of millions of years before humans appeared? These designs could hardly be mere imagination, because so many details are astonishingly correct. Some figures even show horizontal dinosaur tails that do not touch the ground, a detail only confirmed by modern paleontology in the 20th century. How could artisans thousands of years earlier have known this long before the discovery of such fossils? Beyond dinosaurs, some sculptures portray completely impossible creatures, half-human, half-reptile hybrids, or beings combining the traits of several species. One depicts a man with a crocodile's head, another a winged creature with a human body, and a lizard's head reminiscent of hybrid gods from Sumerian or Egyptian mythology. Some even bear large round eyes and elongated heads eerily similar to depictions of aliens that only became popular in mass culture after World War II. How could villagers in rural Mexico in 1944 create such advanced imagery, especially when ideas about dinosaurs and hybrids were scarcely known among the public? Julsrud believed that the Acambaro figurines were not merely works of art, but the remaining traces of a vanished prehistoric civilization. According to him, these ancient people might have witnessed or even lived alongside dinosaurs, later immortalizing their images in clay as a way to preserve memory. If this hypothesis were ever proven true, it would completely rewrite our understanding of evolution, suggesting that human intelligence may have emerged millions of years earlier than science currently acknowledges. It also raises a profound question: could there have once been an advanced civilization erased by a global catastrophe, leaving behind only faint remnants, like messages whispered from a distant past? Mainstream scientists, however, were far from convinced. They raised a series of questions. If these were truly ancient artifacts, why were no cultural layers or settlement traces found nearby? Why were tens of thousands of figures buried chaotically without stratigraphic order? And most importantly, why did their artistic style blend elements from distant civilizations, Egyptian, Babylonian, Mayan, and Aztec alike? In the 1960s, in an attempt to determine the true age of the Acambaro figurines, scientists used the thermoluminescence method, an advanced technique capable of measuring the last time an object was heated. The initial results shocked the archaeological community. Several samples appeared to be between 4000 and 5000 years old enough to belong to the prehistoric era. However, when experts at the University of Pennsylvania conducted deeper examinations, they found a high likelihood that the samples had been contaminated or refired in recent times, leading to inaccurate results. Consequently, mainstream scholars concluded that the figurines were not as ancient as Julsrud believed, but were likely modern forgeries created in the 20th century, perhaps to attract attention or serve commercial purposes, rather than genuine relics of a lost civilization. Strangely, no one has ever identified who actually made them. If this was indeed a hoax, who could possibly have crafted over 30,000 figurines within a few years, each unique in detail and form, using only rudimentary tools in a remote rural area? And why did the creators know so much about the anatomy of dinosaurs when at that time textbooks offered only vague sketches and little public information? Some alternative researchers argue that the Acambaro figurines are not merely products of imagination, but may contain genetic memories or knowledge orally transmitted through millennia. According to this theory, humanity's ancestors, or perhaps even another intelligent species, may have witnessed the existence of prehistoric giants firsthand and immortalize their images in clay. Bolder viewpoints suggest that ancient humans could have seen dinosaurs through communication with extraterrestrial beings who imparted knowledge far beyond the understanding of their time. If that were true, then the Acambaro figurines would not be random creations, but rather an ancient archive preserving information that modern humanity is still incapable of decoding. Independent researchers have pointed out that many Acambaro figurines display an astonishing level of anatomical accuracy, far beyond what humans could have known in 1944. Some figures show evenly aligned fangs, horizontally extended tails, and overlapping scale patterns remarkably consistent with modern scientific reconstructions of dinosaurs, details that were only confirmed decades later. Notably, several pieces feature raised skin textures and fine etched markings identical to fossilized dinosaur skin impressions discovered long after the statues were made, something people of that era could not possibly have known. This almost prophetic precision raises a haunting question: is it mere coincidence or evidence long dismissed because it challenges the very foundation of modern science? More than half a century later, the mystery of the Acambaro figures remains unsolved. Some are exhibited in local museums labeled as dubious or non-archaeological. Yet hundreds who have seen them in person agree that whatever their origin, they convey a profound message about human imagination and knowledge. Could they represent a fusion of ancestral memory, religious symbolism, and mythic imagery, rather than physical proof of humans coexisting with dinosaurs? Or conversely, could those myths themselves be true memories from an epoch mainstream history refuses to acknowledge? One thing is certain: the images of dinosaurs and impossible creatures within the Acambaro collection have transcended archaeology. They have become symbols of the clash between belief and reason, between science and intuition, between what we know for sure and what the world still conceals. If they are forgeries, they stand among the most elaborate hoaxes in human history. But if not, then these figurines may be keys, unlocking the door to a forgotten era when humans and giant beings once walked beneath the same sky. Did those ancient hands truly carve memories of a prehistoric world, or are they reflecting a truth humanity is simply not yet ready to accept? Hidden deep within the endless golden sands of Taima Oasis in Saudi Arabia stands one of Earth's most bewildering geological formations, the Al-Nazla Rock Formation. To the untrained eye, it might appear as nothing more than a massive boulder weathered by centuries of desert winds. But as you approach it, your sense of reality begins to twist. Right before you stands a colossal rock, perfectly split in half by a razor-sharp line as if cleaved by a precision laser. This isn't a minor crack, nor an irregular fracture like those seen in other ancient stones. It's a mathematically straight, eerily smooth vertical line, dividing the rock into two equal halves that remain mysteriously balanced upon small pedestals of sandstone. For thousands of years, the two pieces have stood unshaken, not collapsed, not eroded, not even slightly tilted, defying everything we know about gravity, geology, and time. What do you think is the laser cut of Al-Nazla simply a freak of nature, or the legacy of something humanity has long forgotten? Let me know your theory in the comments below. The Al-Nazla Formation towers roughly 6 meters high and stretches several meters across. It is composed of sandstone, a material known for being soft and susceptible to erosion. Yet somehow, despite the relentless desert winds, the seasonal temperature extremes, and millennia of geological change, the two halves of Al-Nazla remain perfectly intact. Adding to the mystery are the ancient petroglyphs carved into its surface images, depicting horses, humans, and perhaps long-lost symbols of worship. Archaeologists have dated these carvings to around 4000 years ago, connecting the rock to the ancient Taima civilization, one of Arabia's most important historical trade centers mentioned in Babylonian records and even the Bible. But among all its curiosities, nothing captures the imagination of scientists and explorers more than the laser-like cut. At the heart of Al-Nazla's enigma lies this impossible feature, a smooth vertical split running down its center, straight as an arrow from top to bottom. When examined up close, it appears as if the rock was sliced with a high-precision machine, the kind of cut you'd expect from modern industrial equipment, or a high-energy laser beam, not from natural erosion. How could such a thing happen in a prehistoric desert, long before any known human technology could produce it? Geologists have offered various explanations, but none completely satisfy the mind. The most common theory proposes that a natural fracture formed in the sandstone due to tectonic stress or temperature changes. Over time, wind-blown sand could have gradually polished the split, producing a deceptively clean edge. But skeptics argue that no known natural process can create a separation so consistently straight and evenly deep over several meters of stone. Others suggest capillary water freezing and thawing might have expanded a pre-existing crack. Yet in the harsh, arid environment of Taima, where rainfall is minimal and freezing temperatures are rare, this explanation feels equally improbable. So, if not erosion pressure or temperature, what carved this impossible line? Throughout history, mysterious precision stonework has often been linked to ancient high technology, from the perfectly joined blocks of Pumapunku in Bolivia to the laser-smooth interiors of the Egyptian granite coffins. Al-Nazla's flawless split has therefore sparked the imagination of those who believe ancient civilizations possessed advanced tools now lost to time. Some theorists go further, speculating about extraterrestrial intervention. Could the laser cut be evidence of alien activity thousands of years ago? The idea might sound absurd, but many who have visited the site remark on how unnatural the cut appears, as if it was engineered. The rock's two halves align with uncanny precision, separated by a gap so thin that a single sheet of paper could barely fit between them. And yet neither half has crumbled or fallen, suggesting that the two portions are supported by an invisible equilibrium. If it were merely a random fracture, one side would have eventually collapsed, but they haven't. For thousands of years, the cut has held its perfect balance, undisturbed by wind, heat, or time. Some archaeologists propose a different kind of mystery, not technological, but spiritual. They believe the ancient people of Taima may have considered the formation sacred, interpreting the split as a divine sign or celestial alignment. Indeed, the Taima region was once an important oasis along the ancient incense trade route, rich with temples and astronomical observatories. Researchers have noticed that the Al-Nazla formation faces almost exactly east-west, leading to speculation that the split may align with the rising or setting of the sun during solstices. If so, the mysterious cut could represent a calendar marker carved intentionally, perhaps using rudimentary but ingenious methods to track time or to serve religious rituals. In that case, the laser cut may be less about technology and more about spiritual geometry, a reflection of early humanity's desire to connect with cosmic order. Still, this explanation doesn't account for the geometric perfection of the line itself. Even if ancient people somehow managed to score the stone, how could they achieve such unimaginable precision without modern tools? Natural scientists continue to defend the hypothesis that the Al-Nazla rock is merely a geological coincidence. According to them, natural fractures often appear in sandstone due to uneven weathering. When combined with tectonic movement and the abrasive power of desert winds, those cracks could gradually be polished, creating the illusion of a man-made cut. However, this theory struggles to explain several unusual details. The two halves of the rock display near-perfect symmetry, and the edges of the split are smooth and straight, not jagged as one would expect from a natural fracture. The gap between the two halves remains consistent from top to bottom, showing no signs of compression or widening according to normal physical laws. Even more remarkably, the two small stone pedestals beneath each half still stand intact after thousands of years of erosion by sand and wind. All these elements lead many to wonder, is this truly just a random geological accident? Or could it be a deliberate design, perhaps shaped by human hands, or even a trace of something beyond our current understanding? What's even more baffling is the structure's resilience. Each half of the rock rests delicately on its own tiny base, creating an optical illusion of weightlessness. In theory, a single earthquake tremor or powerful gust should have toppled them long ago. Yet they remain upright, frozen in a perfect pose, as though time itself has chosen to preserve this anomaly. This endurance adds another layer to the mystery. If the split were truly natural, the two halves should have eroded unevenly by now. Instead, they have aged identically, maintaining their symmetry and balance almost as if held together by some hidden design. It's this combination geometric perfection, structural impossibility, and ancient context that makes Al-Nazla not merely a rock, but a riddle. Today, the Al-Nazla rock formation draws scientists and travelers alike, some seeking logic, others mystery. Standing before its flawless split, one feels both awe and disbelief. Could nature alone carve such perfection? Or is it the remnant of a forgotten force that once shaped the desert? This enigma blurs the line between science and legend, fact and faith, as the ancient sands keep their secret in eternal silence. So what truly caused the Al-Nazla split? Was it a natural phenomenon too rare to replicate? Was it the handiwork of ancient engineers, their methods lost to time? Or could it be something entirely beyond the scope of human comprehension, a message carved into stone by an unknown intelligence? Until definitive evidence emerges, Al-Nazla will remain one of Earth's most perfect enigmas, a reminder that even in our age of satellites and supercomputers, there are still places where the world whispers, "You don't know everything yet." And perhaps that is the real mystery, not the cut itself, but what it awakens in us, a lingering curiosity, a challenge to science, and a deep sense of wonder that maybe, just maybe, the universe still hides miracles in plain sight. Deep within the scorched wilderness of northeastern Brazil, where the wind carves the sandstone and time itself seems to have turned to dust, lies a secret older than history. Among the crimson cliffs and sunburned canyons of Serra da Capivara, tens of thousands of ancient paintings cover the rocks, silent witnesses to a forgotten civilization. At first glance, they appear as simple figures, hunters chasing prey dancers in motion rituals beneath the open sky. But beneath those pigments hides something far greater, a message from a world that shouldn't exist, a clue that may force humanity to rewrite everything we thought we knew about our own beginnings in the Americas. Do you think these paintings could be evidence of a civilization far older than we've ever imagined? Share your thoughts in the comments below. What do you believe hides behind the walls of Serra da Capivara? For decades, the dominant theory of human migration claimed that the first people arrived in the Americas around 13,000 years ago, crossing a frozen land bridge from Siberia to Alaska. But the evidence from Serra da Capivara doesn't just challenge that timeline, it shatters it. Radiocarbon dating from charcoal and sediments near the rock shelters suggests that human presence here could reach back 25,000 to 30,000 years, maybe even more. That means someone long before the Clovis people of North America was already painting, dreaming, and living in this remote corner of Brazil, when the rest of the world still slumbered in ice. The first impression one gets from these paintings is their sheer vitality. Thousands of figures dance, hunt, give birth, fight, and worship. Herds of animals, deer, tapirs, armadillos, run across the rock surfaces as if frozen in motion. The red pigment, made from iron oxide and mixed with organic binders, has withstood millennia of wind and heat, glowing as bright today as the day it was applied. Yet the deeper one looks, the more one realizes that these are not just primitive decorations. They are symbols of thought, a window into a mind that could imagine, remember, and tell stories, the very qualities that make us human. But the greatest mystery of Serra da Capivara is not what the paintings show, it is who painted them. When the site was rediscovered in the 1970s, archaeologist Nida Guidon devoted her life to studying it. What she found defied every accepted model of migration. The tools, hearths, and pigments suggested a culture far older than any previously known in the Americas. The radiocarbon dates refused to align with mainstream history. If the data was right, then people had reached South America long before the ice bridge from Siberia even existed. So where did they come from? Guidon proposed an audacious idea that the first inhabitants of South America may have arrived by sea, crossing the Atlantic from Africa, or perhaps even the Pacific from Australia. Such a voyage tens of thousands of years ago sounds impossible, and yet across the ancient world, there are whispers of early seafaring long before recorded history. Could small groups of explorers following coastlines and currents have reached the Brazilian shores by accident or intent? Her theory shook the archaeological establishment. For decades, many scientists rejected it outright. To them, the idea of Paleolithic sailors reaching South America was unthinkable, a violation of the very timeline of human capability. But as evidence mounted, ancient fires tools and genetic hints, the once impossible began to seem at least not entirely insane. The paintings themselves fuel the enigma. Some depict scenes so strange they border on the surreal towering figures with round heads, creatures resembling elephants, or horses, animals that never existed in prehistoric Brazil. Were these depictions of now extinct megafauna, or echoes of memory from faraway lands the artists once knew? Some images even show oval shapes hovering above human figures, prompting wild theories about lost knowledge, forgotten myths, or contact with something beyond our understanding. Still, the central question remains painfully simple and impossibly complex. Who were they? The people of Serra da Capivara lived in a landscape of dry forests and cliffs, a place both harsh and generous. They hunted with stone-tipped weapons, gathered fruits, and perhaps worshipped the forces of nature that shaped their world. But what's striking about their art is its emotional depth. These were not mindless hunters marking kills. These were thinkers recording memory, ritual, and identity. Their paintings show collective dances, births and burials, acts of community spirituality and continuity. They may have believed that painting was a way to speak to their ancestors or to the spirits that governed life and death. Archaeologists have catalogued thousands of such panels, often arranged in narrative sequences like pages of a stone book. Some scenes show lines of dances, others a chase that ends in triumph or tragedy. These are not isolated doodles, they tell stories. And in those stories lies the evidence of language, of tradition, and of imagination. Whoever painted them possessed not only hands capable of shaping stone and pigment, but minds capable of symbolic thought. And that realization that human culture here may have blossomed tens of millennia before conventional science allows is what makes Serra da Capivara so revolutionary. If people were living and creating art in Brazil 25,000 years ago, then the peopling of the Americas is not a simple one-way journey from north to south. It becomes a web of migrations, of lost routes and forgotten voyages. Perhaps humanity reached the New World through multiple paths from different directions long before the ice melted in the north. Yet despite decades of study, Serra da Capivara still resists full understanding. The pigments hold their secrets. The tools remain mute. DNA evidence is scarce, and the layers of time have blurred the footprints of those who once lived there. Even the local climate seems to conspire with mystery. The same dry heat that preserved the art so perfectly also eroded countless traces of the people behind it. Standing before those painted walls, one can't help but feel the weight of the unknown. Who stood here under the same sun thousands of centuries ago? What did they dream of? Did they know they were creating something that would outlive them by ages? The truth may never be fully known, but what Serra da Capivara gives us is something perhaps even greater than an answer. It gives us a mirror. It shows that creativity, curiosity, and the urge to tell stories are as ancient as humanity itself. That somewhere long before civilization, a group of men and women gathered with pigment and stone and decided that their lives mattered enough to be remembered. In the silence of those cliffs, their voices still echo not in words, but in images that speak across time. And so the question endures, eternal and haunting: who were the first artists of the Americas, and how did they find their way to this forgotten corner of the world? Perhaps one day the stones will tell us. Until then, Serra da Capivara remains what it has always been, a sacred dialogue between the living and the dead, between what we know and what we have yet to understand. High along the rugged cliffs of southern Turkey, the ancient land of Lycia guards one of the most haunting legacies of the ancient world, its rock-cut tombs. Carved directly into vertical limestone faces, hundreds of stone facades gaze eternally across valleys and the turquoise waters of the Mediterranean. They stand as both monuments to the dead and puzzles to the living relics of a civilization that disappeared, leaving behind no clear answers as to how or why these incredible sanctuaries of stone were made. From a distance, the Lycian tombs look almost like entire cities suspended on the cliffs, miniature houses, temples and sanctuaries frozen in time. Some rise high above river valleys, like Myra and Tel Messos, their facades carved so precisely that they resemble wooden houses rather than works of stone. Columns, pediments, door frames, even simulated hinges, and beams all sculpted with a precision that seems impossible given the tools of the time. And yet no record explains who carved them, how long it took, or how such work was even possible without advanced scaffolding or lifting systems. What do you think about this mystery? How did the Lycians carve tombs on cliffs that seem almost impossible to reach? Share your theories or thoughts in the comments below. For the Lycians, death was not an end, but a continuation. They believed the soul needed a physical home, a place where the spirit could dwell and from which it could ascend to the heavens. To them, the higher the tomb, the closer it was to the divine. This spiritual concept may explain why their burial chambers were placed in locations so dangerous that even today, modern climbers struggle to reach them. The rock-cut tombs line the cliffs above ancient Lycian cities such as Myra, Phthia, Xanthos, and Tel Messos. Each tomb is carved with the same reverence one might build a temple for the gods. Their facades mirror the architectural forms of Lycian wooden houses, a poetic attempt to recreate earthly comfort in the afterlife. But these houses of eternity are also defiant in their isolation. They cling to sheer rock faces as if the builders wanted to separate the dead completely from the world of the living. The Lycian people themselves remain an enigma. They flourished between the 15th and 4th century BCE, occupying a region that was strategically placed between Greece, Persia, and the Anatolian interior. Their culture absorbed and reinterpreted foreign influences while preserving its unique language and beliefs. Ancient Greek historians like Herodotus describe them as fiercely independent, with a democratic federation, the Lycian League, long before the idea of a republic took root elsewhere. Yet by the time Alexander the Great passed through Asia Minor, Lycia had already begun to fade into the Hellenistic world. Their language vanished, their myths forgotten. Only the tombs remained, carved into stone, so enduring that even 500 years of erosion could not erase them. Today, those tombs serve as the last surviving dialogue between the modern world and a people whose voices have long been silenced. The design of the tombs reveals astonishing architectural sophistication. Archaeologists classify them into three main types: house tombs, temple tombs, and sarcophagus tombs. House tombs mimic domestic architecture, suggesting that the dead would continue their daily life in another realm. Temple tombs, by contrast, elevate the dead to divine status with elaborate facades and columned entrances resembling miniature sanctuaries. The sarcophagus tombs, scattered on hillsides, show influence from both Anatolian and Greek traditions. What unites them all is their mastery of stone carving. The artisans of Lycia managed to replicate even the smallest wooden textures, beam joints, dowel holes, and curved eaves into solid rock. But this perfection raises the most haunting question of all. How did they achieve it? Archaeological studies revealed that the Lycians used bronze and iron chisels, hammers, and pickaxes. Yet these tools would have worn down rapidly against the hard limestone. More perplexing is the sheer location of many tombs. They were carved not at ground level, but high on cliff faces, where a single misstep would mean death. Some researchers suggest that scaffolding was used, wooden frameworks anchored into the rock by holes still visible today. Others believe the carvers started from the top of the cliff and worked their way downward, creating ledges as they went. But neither theory fully explains the accuracy and symmetry of the designs. There are tombs placed on vertical cliff walls with no visible ledges, no approach paths, and no space for scaffolds. To this day, no one has conclusively explained how workers could stand, measure, and carve with such precision. Even more mysterious is the alignment of some tombs. Many are positioned to face the sunrise or specific constellations, hinting at astronomical symbolism. Could they have been planned not only as graves, but as cosmic portals? Stone gates aligned with the heavens to guide the soul's ascent. When viewed collectively, the Lycian tombs appear less like individual graves and more like a vast religious landscape carved to bridge the mortal and divine worlds. Their construction must have required extraordinary effort, organization, and risk. Why devote such resources to structures for the dead? One explanation is religious devotion. The Lycians worshipped gods, tied to the sky, and mountain spaces of elevation and transcendence. Carving tombs into cliffs was an act of faith, a literal manifestation of reaching upward toward the afterlife. Another view suggests political symbolism. These tombs, especially the larger temple ones, were status markers. They broadcasted the power and wealth of noble families, forever visible to all below. But perhaps the greatest mystery is not why they built them, but how they could do so with such technical mastery. The precision of their geometry, the smoothness of their walls, and the scale of their placement challenge our assumptions about ancient engineering. This is the heart of the Lycian mystery, a question that centuries of study have yet to answer. The tombs were carved deep into sheer rock cliffs, so high that even with modern technology reaching and surveying them is a challenge. How did ancient builders accomplish this when they had no machinery, cranes, metal scaffolds, or safety ropes? Many scholars speculate that the Lycians might have used wooden scaffolding anchored into the rock with pegs, and indeed some cavities visible today may be remnants of such structures. However, not every tomb site shows this evidence, and the perfect symmetry of the facades suggests that the craftsmen maintained incredible precision even while standing in perilous positions. If they carved from top to bottom, how did they determine depth, angle, and proportion without any precise measuring instruments? The question grows more complex when we consider the consistent design across all of Lycia. From Phethii to Demre, the tombs share the same architectural style, implying a standardized system of technique and teaching passed down through generations of artisans. Yet strangely, no carvings tools or written instructions have ever been found to explain their process. Some researchers compare their methods to those of the Inca stonemasons in South America, who also shaped hard rock with unbelievable precision. Others suggest that the Lycians may have inherited lost secrets from earlier Anatolian civilizations, possibly connected to the Hittites. More speculative theories propose that they possessed advanced astronomical or engineering knowledge far ahead of their time. Though none of these ideas have been proven, archaeological evidence cannot deny one fact: these tombs could not have been made by chance. They required planning, organization, and craftsmanship far beyond what most civilizations of the era could achieve. And that is why the mystery of Lycia endures as a silent challenge to the modern world. Do we truly understand the full extent of what ancient humans were capable of? Time has turned the rock tombs of Lycia into silent cathedrals carved into the cliffs. The colors that once adorned their facades have faded, and vegetation now covers their eternally sealed doors. The dead are gone, yet their silence still echoes within the stone. Local legends say that ancient spirits still guard these cliffs, and at times, people claim to hear strange echoes or winds whispering through the ravines. Whether natural or something deeper, the air around these tombs remains thick with mystery. Archaeologists continue to study them with drones and lasers, yet one question endures: how did the Lycians defy gravity, stone, and time to create such a wonder? Beneath layers of cold stone and dense darkness in the caves of Mount Owen, New Zealand, explorers stumbled upon one of the most extraordinary finds in archaeological history: a massive claw still covered in skin and sinew, its talon curved and sharp like a blade, appearing as though it had just been severed from a living creature. In 1986, during an expedition into unnamed caves at an altitude of over 2,000 meters, the research team accidentally discovered this bizarre mummified relic. When the first flashlight beam hit it, the entire group fell silent. It looked as if they were standing before the preserved remains of a prehistoric beast. The claw, with its shrunken skin clinging tightly to bone and its dry tendons still intact, looked nothing like a fossil. It looked alive. What do you think? Could a creature like the moa have survived far longer than science believes? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think the Mount Owen claw is just an ancient relic, or evidence that something much more mysterious once walked those caves? Archaeologists immediately brought the specimen back for analysis. Initially, many thought it might belong to some kind of carnivorous creature, perhaps an eagle or even a prehistoric reptile. However, tissue and bone studies revealed something entirely different. It was the claw of a giant bird that had been extinct for thousands of years, the moa, one of New Zealand's most legendary creatures. What astonished researchers even more was the degree of preservation. Though carbon dating showed it to be over 300 years old, Its skin muscles and tendons remained so well preserved it looked as if it had died only yesterday. The Mount Owen caves maintain near-freezing temperatures year-round, with extremely low humidity and almost no bacterial activity, forming a perfect natural freezer. These conditions allowed the soft tissues of the claw to remain intact for millennia. Yet this almost impossible state of preservation raised a haunting question among scientists: had the moa truly been extinct for thousands of years? Or could some individuals have survived into the recent past, perhaps even closer to our time than we ever imagined? To understand why this question shook the scientific world, we must look back thousands of years when moa dominated New Zealand's lush forests. Flightless, towering up to 3.6 meters tall and weighing over 200 kilograms, the moa was a symbol of evolutionary power. With no large land predators except for the Haas eagle, its only natural enemy, the moa thrived for millennia. But when the Maori, New Zealand's first settlers, arrived around the 13th century, moa became an abundant and easy food source. Within just a few centuries, the entire species was wiped out, a sobering testament to how quickly humans can drive a species to extinction. But if their story truly ended there, how could the Mount Owen claw be so lifelike? Why were its tissues and tendons still so intact, as though it had only dried out a few decades ago instead of over 3 millennia? This question sparked one of the longest-running debates in New Zealand's natural history. Many scientists believe it was purely nature's luck, a perfect preservation environment, accidentally freezing organic matter before it could decay. However, some researchers, both professional and amateur, insist that this was not mere coincidence, but possibly the last physical trace of a moa that survived into more recent centuries, perhaps only a few hundred years ago. Maori legends lend further weight to this speculation. In many ancient tales, the Maori speak of gigantic birds as tall as palm trees, covered in thick feathers, and armed with powerful claws, creatures that match the description of the moa. Some stories even describe encounters with flightless birds in remote southern forests long after the species was supposedly extinct. Were these stories pure myth or cultural memories passed down from people who had actually seen living moa? During the 19th century, as European settlers began exploring New Zealand, numerous strange reports emerged: enormous footprints, deep resonant calls echoing through forests, and even unidentified clumps of feathers. Some hunters claimed to have seen an ostrich-like creature, taller than a man, sprinting through the night. None of these sightings were ever confirmed, but the reports remain preserved in field journals of early explorers. The question, did the moa really go extinct, isn't merely romantic curiosity. Scientifically, it touches on a deeper issue: could we be underestimating nature's ability to hide survivors? Several species, once thought to be long gone, have resurfaced after millions of years, such as the coelacanth, a prehistoric fish believed to have vanished in the Cretaceous period until a living specimen was found in 1938. Could the moa be a terrestrial coelacanth, a living echo of an age we believed was lost? Occasional modern expeditions have sought to answer that question. Researchers have deployed drones, thermal sensors, and even tracking dogs to scan the dense, untouched forests of Fiordland, New Zealand's most remote wilderness. While no definitive proof has surfaced, tiny clues, traces of DNA, isolated feathers, and even semi-fresh droppings have occasionally been found, each one reigniting the belief that perhaps somewhere a few individuals still survive in secrecy. The Mount Owen claw, therefore, is more than just an archaeological relic. It stands as a symbol of the fragile boundary between past and present, between what we believe lost and what might still endure. When one looks at it, the dry skin, the shrunken tendons, the curved blade like nail, one doesn't merely see the remains of a giant bird, but a shimmering question about the resilience of life itself. Nature, it seems, still guards its secrets, well hiding survivors deep in the untouched wilderness, waiting to be rediscovered. Today, the claw is displayed at the Canterbury Museum in Christchurch, encased in glass, yet its presence still chills those who see it. Thousands of visitors each year stop gazing in awe, not merely because of its size or age, but because of the eerie sense that it still feels alive. Every wrinkle, every tendon, every detail recalls a creature that once roamed the green forests, leaving deep footprints in the soft earth. As light glints off that ancient skin, many can't help but wonder if nature could preserve a limb so perfectly for over 3,000 years. What stops us from believing that a few moa might still be wandering somewhere deep within the uncharted forests? That question has never been answered. Perhaps the moa truly is gone forever. Yet the Mount Owen claw remains as proof that nature can always make us doubt what we think we know. It is a message from the Earth itself, a reminder that our planet's history is not finished, but still being written, one mystery, one forgotten creature, one ancient bone or claw at a time. The enigma of the moa, the towering bird that once ruled New Zealand, may not be over. And when we look upon that preserved claw, it's as if we can still hear its heavy footsteps echoing faintly through the misty ridges of Mount Owen, a whisper that nature never reveals all of its secrets. Hidden among the windswept volcanic peaks of Alaska's Aleutian Islands lies one of the most intriguing archaeological mysteries in North America, the discovery of several giant human skulls, reportedly far larger and stranger than any normal human remains. What began as an ordinary scientific expedition in the early 20th century would soon become a story buried under missing evidence, rumors of government suppression, and lingering questions about who or what once inhabited these remote islands before recorded history. If these enormous skulls truly existed with brain volumes beyond human norms, do you believe they belonged to a long-lost branch of humanity? Or do you think science was right to dismiss them as myth? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The Aleutian Islands stretch like a chain of broken teeth between Alaska and Russia, a harsh, mist-covered realm battered by the North Pacific. For centuries, these islands have been home to the Aleut people, skilled seafarers, who thrived in one of the world's most unforgiving environments. But beneath their windswept cliffs and sea caves, early explorers stumbled upon something that defied all anthropological expectations. Skulls that were not only elongated and thick-boned, but massive in every dimension. When American archaeologists and naval personnel began excavating burial sites in the early 1900s, they expected to find typical Aleut skeletal remains, small, robust, and adapted to a maritime lifestyle. Instead, they uncovered skulls with cranial capacities estimated to be 25 to 30% larger than the modern human average. Their jaws were wider, their eye sockets deeper, their brow ridges heavier. Some described the skulls as looking almost Neanderthal, while others said they resembled no known human species. The sheer size of these skulls became the center of fascination and controversy. These were not minor variations. According to field notes that surfaced briefly before disappearing into institutional archives, the skulls measured up to 40 centimeters from brow to occiput, with unusually thick cranial plates that hinted at immense physical strength. When compared to the average adult human skull, roughly 22 centimeters in length, these bones appeared to belong to beings of exceptional stature. Some estimates suggested full body heights of over 2.5 meters, though no complete skeletons were ever verified. Whether these measurements were exaggerated or not, they ignited a debate that still smolders today. At first, scientists tried to explain the anomaly through known cultural practices. In South America, the Paracas people famously practiced intentional cranial deformation, binding infants' heads with cloth to elongate their skulls into conical shapes. But among the Aleuts, no evidence of such a tradition has ever been found. There were no binding tools, no oral traditions describing head shaping, and no signs of deliberate compression on the bone's surfaces. The elongation, if genuine, seemed to be natural. This left researchers with an uncomfortable possibility that the Aleutians once hosted a population with biological features unlike any known human group. Some of the skulls witnesses claimed had extraordinarily large brain cavities, far greater than even the highest recorded modern human capacity. This was particularly striking because cranial size often correlates with body mass. If accurate, these skulls suggested not only taller humans, but perhaps smarter ones as well. Yet curiously, there were no signs of advanced tools, architecture, or artifacts associated with such intelligence. Instead, the skulls were found among simple grave goods, bone fishhooks, ivory ornaments, and primitive stone implements. It was as if the physical remains belonged to giants, but their culture remained deceptively ordinary. Reports soon filtered back to the continental United States, catching the attention of institutions such as the Smithsonian. Crates containing the mysterious skulls were supposedly shipped to Washington, D.C. for further study. But after that, the trail went cold. Researchers who later inquired about the Aleutian specimens found no record of them in official catalogues. They had simply vanished, absorbed perhaps into the vast unindexed collections of America's largest museum, or quietly removed to prevent what some called anthropological chaos. This disappearance only deepened the myth. Alternative historians proposed that the skulls were deliberately suppressed because they challenged the accepted evolutionary timeline. A race of giant humans thriving in the far north would imply a chapter of human history unknown to science. It would raise questions about migration adaptation and even intelligence distribution across prehistoric Earth. Others went further, suggesting these beings might have been a non-human offshoot, a relic species that coexisted with early Homo sapiens before fading into myth. Adding fuel to speculation, Aleut oral legends tell of great people from the sea, towering figures who arrived on canoes of bone and vanished after a great storm. The resemblance between these stories and the discovery of large skulls is difficult to ignore. Were these tales distant echoes of encounters with such a people? Or are they purely symbolic myths that modern storytellers have conveniently aligned with archaeological rumor? Skeptics argue that the skulls were simply misidentified, perhaps the result of taphonomic distortion, disease-related enlargement, or the natural variation of small populations isolated on islands for millennia. They emphasize that no verified photographs or detailed measurements of the supposed giant skulls have ever been published in peer-reviewed literature. Without physical evidence, all claims remain anecdotal. And yet the consistency of multiple independent accounts from early explorers, naval officers, and local diggers suggests that something unusual was indeed uncovered. Even today, the Aleutian Islands remain one of the least studied regions in American archaeology. The harsh weather remoteness and political restrictions on disturbing indigenous burial sites have left many caves unexamined. It's entirely possible that additional remains still lie hidden beneath the permafrost or in the sealed layers of volcanic ash. But until official excavations resume, the mystery remains locked away by both nature and bureaucracy. What makes this story endure is not only the lost evidence, but also the implications of what those skulls might represent. If real, they could force us to rethink the diversity of ancient humanity, not just in Africa or Eurasia, but on the fringes of the Arctic itself. Could the Aleutians have been home to an isolated branch of archaic humans, a people whose size and strength evolved to withstand the brutal northern climate? Or perhaps a hybrid population, part Homo sapiens, part something older? The most haunting question of all concerns the scale of suppression. Why did the records vanish? Was it simple clerical neglect, or a conscious effort to bury an inconvenient truth? Across North America, similar stories persist: giant skeletons found in burial mounds, bones sent to museums and never seen again. The pattern is eerily consistent. Each time such evidence arises, it disappears behind the walls of institutions sworn to preserve it. Whether that is coincidence or conspiracy depends on whom you ask. In the end, the giant skulls of the Aleutian Islands hover between legend and lost science, a fragment of a story that refuses to die. They remind us how fragile our understanding of the past truly is. History is not only written by the victors, it is curated by those who decide what to display and what to hide. Somewhere, perhaps in a forgotten drawer or mislabeled crate, deep within a museum basement, the truth about these skulls may still exist, silent, dusty, and waiting to be rediscovered. Until then, the mystery endures, like the fog that forever clings to the Aleutian cliffs, thick, shifting, and impenetrable. High in the Andes Mountains, where clouds brush the jagged peaks and thin air makes every breath a challenge, the Inca built a civilization that seemed to defy nature itself. Among their many accomplishments, roads that stretch across continents, walls that have survived earthquakes, their mastery of water stands as one of the greatest engineering mysteries in human history. The Incan water systems, carved from stone and guided by the mountain's own heartbeat, continue to flow today, more than 5 centuries after the empire's fall. But beyond the beauty and utility of these channels lies a question that no one has yet been able to answer: who calculated them with such impossible precision? If these systems are so advanced that even modern engineers struggle to explain them, do you believe the Inca discovered this knowledge on their own? Or could they have inherited it from an older, forgotten civilization? Share your thoughts below. At the heart of this mystery lies a paradox. The Inca left behind no written records of mathematical equations, no architectural blueprints, and no tools made of steel. Yet their aqueducts, fountains, and drainage systems display a level of precision that rivals and sometimes surpasses that of modern hydraulic engineers. In Machu Picchu, one of their crown jewels, water descends gracefully from a natural spring atop the mountain, flowing through a series of stone channels carved with gradients so precise that the current never slows, never floods, never falters. Modern researchers who have mapped these systems using laser technology discovered that each segment of the channel maintains a consistent slope of roughly 3 to 5 degrees, just enough to sustain a smooth laminar flow without erosion. To achieve such perfection without modern instruments seems almost otherworldly. But the Inca did more than guide water; they understood it. They treated it as a living force that needed to be respected and balanced. Their cities were built in harmony with the mountains, not against them. Every stone canal and terrace was designed to cooperate with the natural contours of the landscape. They did not force the rivers to change course. Instead, they invited them to flow exactly where they wanted. This philosophy of balance created an intricate hydraulic network that blended spirituality, functionality, and science into one seamless system. From Cusco to Tipon, from Ollantaytambo to the sacred site of Tambomachay, the Inca managed to control water at altitudes exceeding 3,000 meters, an environment where even modern infrastructure struggles to survive. At Tipon, the precision becomes almost poetic. Water emerges from carved fountains that divide perfectly into symmetrical streams. Each drop seems to follow a rhythm, as if responding to some hidden geometry encoded within the stone. Some archaeologists believe these sites had ritual purposes, serving as temples dedicated to water and fertility. The flow itself may have symbolized life rebirth and the eternal connection between humans and Pachamama, the Earth Mother. Yet beneath this spiritual interpretation, the engineering challenge remains staggering. How did they calculate the flow rate so precisely that the system could still operate flawlessly 500 years later? Part of the genius of Incan water management lay in their understanding of geological and hydrological stability. They built multi-tiered systems of drainage and filtration beneath their structures, an invisible infrastructure that prevented flooding and landslides during heavy rains. In Machu Picchu, for instance, over 60% of the city's architecture lies underground, layers of crushed rock and gravel carefully placed to absorb excess water and maintain equilibrium. Every terrace acted like a sponge, capturing rainfall and channeling it back to the lower valleys. This was sustainability at its most elegant, a civilization living in dialogue with its environment. Yet for all their brilliance, the question of authorship lingers. Who were the minds behind this precision? The Inca themselves, according to Spanish chronicles, were master builders, but they often attributed their own knowledge to earlier peoples, the mysterious Wari Tiahuanaco, or even older civilizations lost to time. Could these mountain engineers have inherited their hydraulic secrets from predecessors whose names we no longer know? Some scholars point to the seamless stonework of pre-Incan ruins like Sacsayhuaman and Ollantaytambo as evidence of a deeper legacy, an architectural tradition that the Inca perfected but did not originate. When engineers today study these systems, they find something unnerving. The mathematical relationships between slope pressure and flow appear pre-calculated, as though designed by someone with a modern understanding of fluid dynamics. For example, the curvature of certain canals at Taipon follows ratios that minimize turbulence and maintain water cohesion, mirroring principles used in contemporary hydrology. Yet these designs predate the invention of calculus by centuries. How could a civilization without advanced tools, metal rulers, or written equations understand principles we only formalized in recent centuries? Some researchers propose that the Inca achieved their precision through empirical observation, centuries of trial and error, guided by acute environmental awareness. Others, however, suggest that there may have been an intuitive science at play, a way of perceiving nature, not as separate from humanity, but as part of a single living system. In this worldview, every rock, every drop of water carried meaning. The builders didn't need to calculate in the modern sense, they simply understood. Perhaps they read the mountains like a text, listening to their echoes, watching how water moved after each rainfall, learning directly from the earth. If true, then the Incan engineers were not just mathematicians of stone, they were poets of nature. Still, there are details that defy even this explanation. The uniform gradient maintained over kilometers of rough terrain, the perfectly aligned fountains whose pressure never varies, the hidden valves and chambers that seem to regulate flow automatically, these hint at a level of sophistication that feels almost too advanced. Were these systems truly designed by human hands alone, or did the Inca inherit a legacy of knowledge from an unknown source, perhaps a forgotten culture that once thrived in the high Andes long before recorded history? Legends among the Quechua speak of Viracocha, the great creator who taught humanity the arts of stone and water before vanishing into the Western Sea. Could this myth preserve the memory of a vanished group of engineers, those who first learned to make the mountains themselves breathe water? The line between myth and memory blurs here, and science can only go so far. Excavations and LiDAR scans continue to reveal new channels buried beneath centuries of soil, suggesting that we've only glimpsed a fraction of the original system. Each discovery raises more questions than answers. Perhaps the greatest mystery of all is not how the Inca built these systems, but why they built them with such care. For a people who believed water to be sacred, the act of precision itself may have been a form of worship. To calculate perfectly was to honor the universe's design. To balance flow and gravity was to echo the balance of life and death. Their cities were not just habitations, they were living temples of geometry, where physics and faith met in a single stream of running water. And yet, even with all our satellites, lasers, and computer models, we still cannot fully replicate what they achieved by hand. The water still flows, whispering through the channels, carved 500 years ago, untouched by time. It moves with the same rhythm it did when the priests of the sun watched it glisten beneath the Andean dawn. And as we listen to that ancient sound, we can't help but wonder, who were the minds that calculated the mountains, who taught them to command the elements with such grace? And most of all, how much of their knowledge have we truly lost? At the heart of Mesopotamia, where the first bricks of human civilization were laid, lies an artifact that continues to astonish archaeologists and art historians alike. The Waka vase, also known as the Uruk vase. This object is far more than a vessel. It is a story carved in stone, a sacred visual scripture, and possibly the earliest narrative artwork ever created by humankind. Carved around 3200 to 3000 BCE, it reveals a complex world of ideas, a time when the ancient Sumerians transitioned from material thinking to symbolic thought, from human to divine understanding. Yet hidden within its exquisite carvings remains a profound mystery. Who conceived and designed this entire composition, so scientifically balanced, so harmonious and so perfect that it seems beyond the capability of its era? If you were to stand before the Waka vase, a symbol of 5,000 years of human thought, would you believe it to be the creation of a collective or of an anonymous genius who first taught humanity to tell stories through art? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The Waka vase was unearthed in the city of Uruk, the heart of ancient Sumerian civilization, now located in southern Iraq. Nearly 1 meter tall and weighing dozens of kilograms, carved from smooth white alabaster, it has survived for millennia, standing as a witness to the rise of the world's first organized society. When archaeologists first discovered it, they immediately realized it was more than a religious relic, it was a social diagram encoded in imagery. The vase's surface is divided into 4 distinct registers, each telling part of a continuous story, like a reel of film wrapped around stone. On the lowest level, the artist carved flowing waters and sprouting plant symbols of the fertile earth, the source of all human life. Above that appear herds of sheep and goats neatly aligned in rows, representing wealth and offerings. The next level introduces human figures, bare-chested men with shaven heads carrying baskets of gifts toward a temple. And at the top stands a woman before the sacred shrine, her hands receiving offerings surrounded by symbols of fertility and power. Many scholars believe this figure represents the goddess Inanna, divine patroness of love, war, and fertility. What truly baffles scholars is the mathematical precision of the composition. Every figure, every line, every position follows an unseen geometric order, as if the sculptor already understood the principles of visual balance and symbolic hierarchy thousands of years before they were formally defined. The stream at the bottom is not merely a symbol of life, it forms the base axis of the entire structure, creating symmetry for the levels above. The animals march rhythmically, alternating directions to evoke motion around the vase. At the center, the human figures increase in scale from small to large until they reach the goddess, forming a symbolic evolution from nature through animals to humanity and ultimately to the divine. This structure was no coincidence, it was mathematical. When researchers measured each detail, they found that the height ratios between levels followed a specific rule closely resembling the golden ratio that the Greeks would describe thousands of years later. This raised a stunning question. How could such an early civilization, before the invention of writing, have developed such an advanced system of visual reasoning? The more scientists studied it, the more they realized the Waka vase was not the work of a single artisan. It was a fusion of collective wisdom, perhaps orchestrated by a spiritual architect, someone deeply versed in religion, art, and the structure of Sumerian society. Some suggest it was a high priest who was also an artist tasked with transferring the sacred image of Inanna into physical form, like an ancient director guiding every shot of a film carved in stone. But if so, who was this person? No inscription bears their name. No record mentions them. Only the images remain silent, yet flawless. Many theories have been proposed. Some argue the vase was designed by temple craftsmen following strict ritual guidelines. Each register symbolized a realm of the cosmos, as the Sumerians understood it, water below living beings, in the middle gods above. The artisans may have simply followed religious prescriptions without grasping the full meaning. Yet modern scholars suggest that the vase's design transcends ritual order. It demonstrates a profound comprehension of social hierarchy, spiritual symbolism, and human psychology, something that could only have come from a single visionary mind capable of synthesizing knowledge far ahead of its time. A bolder hypothesis proposes that the vase was actually a religious teaching device, crafted to explain the order of the universe to the people, from the life-giving river to the deities ruling over harvests and fertility. If true, the designer was not merely an artisan, but a philosopher, perhaps the first person to teach through imagery. Tiny details, such as the swirling lines around stalks of grain or the way light falls upon the stone, suggest deliberate effort to create a sense of motion, as though life itself were pulsing through the rock. Even more fascinating is how the vase portrays the unity between human and divine. On the uppermost level, the goddess Inanna and the mortal offering gifts are nearly the same size. This suggests that the Sumerians had not yet drawn a strict line between gods and humans, but viewed both as interconnected elements of a single cosmic whole. That worldview would later influence millennia of religious philosophy. The material itself adds another layer of mystery. Alabaster was not easily accessible in Uruk. Softer than marble, yet extremely difficult to carve in fine detail, without refined metal tools, it demands extraordinary skill. Still, the carvings on the Waka vase are crisp, deep, and symmetrical, almost as if crafted with modern instruments. Some researchers question whether the Sumerians possessed lost techniques or whether they relied solely on patience, vision, and genius to achieve such perfection. The mystery did not end in antiquity. In the 21st century, during the chaos of war in Iraq, the vase was stolen from the National Museum of Baghdad in 2003. When it was finally recovered, it had been shattered into many fragments, and its upper portion was suspected to be a modern restoration. Since then, some have speculated that the current version may not be entirely original, that some carvings might have been altered or lost, leaving us forever uncertain of the full message the ancient sculptor intended. And yet, when one stands before the Waka vase, one feels a mysterious harmony, both sacred and human. It tells not just a story of ritual offering, but of how humanity came to order the world, seeking its place between earth and sky. It marks the first known moment when art became the language of thought. And still, the greatest question remains, the one unanswered for over 5 millennia. Who planned, measured, and designed this flawless composition? Was it a collective of nameless artisans or a single extraordinary mind, the first in human history to realize that imagery could convey concept order and divinity. If so, that person may well have been the architect of perception, the one who laid the foundation for all narrative art, visual religion, and human understanding that followed. Though their name is lost, their influence endures, etched in every artistic tradition that came after, in Egyptian murals, Greek reliefs, and Renaissance frescoes. It all began with one idea carved into white stone at Uruk, the belief that the story of humanity could be told through images, and that images could carry the soul. Among the many enigmas that haunt European history, few are as haunting, as strangely poetic, and as endlessly debated as the man in the Iron Mask. For more than 3 centuries, historians, writers, and conspiracy theorists have been captivated by this solitary figure, a man imprisoned under the strictest secrecy, his face hidden behind a mask that became a symbol of absolute mystery. Who was he? What secret could be so dangerous that it required a human being to be erased from history itself? Who do you think the man in the Iron Mask really was? A royal twin, a traitor, or someone history was never meant to remember? Share your theory in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you think. Records from the reign of Louis XIV confirm that such a man existed. He was not merely a legend from Alexandre Dumas's novel, but a real inmate who appeared in the royal archives, transferred between fortresses under the supervision of the same jailer, Benin d'Auvergne de Saint-Marc. He first appeared at the fortress of Pignerol, later at Exilles, and finally at the Bastille, where he died in the year 1703. For decades, he was kept under strict isolation, his name never spoken aloud, his face never seen. All who served near him were sworn to silence under penalty of death. They were forbidden to describe him, to converse with him, even to look at him directly for too long. Letters between the jailers reveal that meals were delivered silently, that any attempt at communication was punished, and that the prisoner's possessions, his clothes, his bedding, even the plates he used, were burned after use to prevent any written message from leaving his cell. Whoever he was, his existence itself was considered dangerous. Despite the nickname, the Iron Mask, the covering he wore, was most likely made of black velvet lined with metal, not pure iron. The exaggeration came later, born from myth and imagination. Yet the symbolism of that mask, unyielding, cold, inhuman, captured the essence of his fate. The mask became not just a tool of concealment, but a prison within a prison, turning the man into an eternal cipher. Eyewitnesses, though rare, described him as polite and educated, moving with the dignity of someone raised in noble circles. He was given decent food, fine clothing, and was addressed with courtesy by the guards, an indication that he might have been of high rank. He was not tortured, not beaten, only confined and silenced. The care taken in his imprisonment suggested that his captors were not punishing a common criminal, but preserving a secret too valuable to destroy. Over the centuries, countless theories have tried to unmask him. Some claimed he was Eustache d'Orge, a man who supposedly knew too much about state corruption. Others pointed to Nicolas Fouquet, the disgraced finance minister, whose power once rivaled the Sun King himself. Still others whispered that he was the biological father of Louis XIV, or even the king's own twin brother, hidden away to protect the legitimacy of the crown. The twin theory, first popularized by Dumas in the 19th century, became the most romantic of all. According to it, Queen Anne gave birth to twin sons. Fearing the chaos of two potential kings, Cardinal Mazarin and the court decided to hide one child forever. Raised in secrecy, the second twin became a man without a name, imprisoned once his existence was discovered. If true France's golden age under Louis XIV would rest on the most tragic of foundations, a brother erased, to preserve the illusion of divine monarchy. By the time he was moved to the Bastille, the prisoner had been living under confinement for more than 30 years. The warden Saint-Marc, who had guarded him from the beginning, continued to serve him personally. When Saint-Marc was promoted to governor of the Bastille in the year 1698, he brought the masked man with him in a covered litter, ensuring no one along the journey could glimpse his face. The guards in the Bastille reported that he was treated with great respect. His meals were served on fine silverware. He was allowed to play the lute, yet every time he wrote something, the ink and paper were inspected. The walls of his cell were double-layered stone, and every word he uttered was monitored. Even at the end of his life, his identity remained a state secret, guarded with almost religious zeal. And then came the moment that should have ended the mystery, but instead deepened it. On November 19th, 1703, the prisoner died quietly in his cell. The official Bastille records state that a man named Marchioli passed away that night and was buried the next day in the cemetery of Saint-Paul, Paris. No family claimed the body. No funeral rites were performed. His personal effects were burned, and his cell was scrubbed clean within hours. The name Marchioli appeared nowhere else in the archives of France or Italy. It was almost certainly an alias. The priest who recorded his burial noted that the deceased had been a man of advanced age, but gave no description. Strangely, 2 days after his death, orders arrived from Versailles to destroy or censor any correspondence related to him. Pages were blotted out with thick black ink, names erased and numbers rewritten. It was as if the state itself sought to bury not just his body, but the very memory of his existence. To historians, this moment, his anonymous burial and the deliberate cleansing of the records became the beating heart of the mystery. If he were an ordinary spy, traitor, or criminal, why go to such lengths? Why conceal his death so swiftly and erase every trace of his identity? The careful orchestration of silence suggests something far greater, something that threatened the very legitimacy of the monarchy. The reign of Louis XIV was built on the image of the Sun King, the divine, unchallengeable ruler whose power emanated like light itself. In such a system, even a whisper of illegitimacy could be fatal. If the man in the mask had royal blood, if he were a twin, a hidden heir, or the king's own father, revealing him could have shattered the foundation of France's absolute monarchy. Thus, keeping him alive but unseen was the perfect solution. He was silenced, but not executed, imprisoned, but maintained with dignity, as though the crown wished to hide its shame without staining its hands with blood. His mask, in this sense, was both literal and symbolic. It concealed not just a face, but the sins of an empire. From the 18th century onward, historians, journalists, and adventurers tried to uncover who the man really was. Letters from Voltaire suggested that he was of noble birth, perhaps the brother of the king. Later discoveries pointed to coded documents, references in the royal archives, and the private correspondence of Saint-Marc himself. Every new clue seemed to open a new door, but behind each door was only more shadow. Even modern technology has not broken the silence. Attempts to trace genealogical links through DNA or forensic reconstruction have yielded nothing. The burial ground at Saint-Paul was destroyed during the French Revolution, erasing any chance of finding his remains. Some researchers claim to have identified Eustache Dauger as the real man in the mask, but contradictions in the records remain unresolved. To this day, no definitive evidence has ever surfaced. The legend of the man in the iron mask endures not for what we know, but for what we never will. His mask has become a timeless symbol of silence of power that hides truth and truth that defies power. Each new clue only deepens the mystery, reminding us that some secrets are meant to remain in the dark. So history never forgets how fragile truth truly is. Who was the man behind the mask? A traitor silenced, a royal brother denied his birthright, a man punished for knowing too much. Over 300 years after his death, his name remains unspoken, his grave unmarked. The mask that once concealed his face has become the face of the mystery itself, cold, silent, eternal. Perhaps, as one historian once said, he is not a man, but an idea, the idea that truth can be imprisoned but never killed. And so the Iron Mask endures not as an artifact, but as a haunting reminder that even kings fear certain truths. Across the mist-shrouded plains of prehistoric Europe, a people once thrived, mysterious, mobile, and remarkably skilled. They carried with them curved drinking vessels unlike any the continent had ever seen, vessels shaped like inverted bells beakers. From these simple clay forms, archaeologists would later give them their name, the beaker culture. But behind the beauty of their pottery lies one of the most haunting enigmas in ancient European history: how a people so advanced, so widespread, could simply vanish. What do you think truly caused the beaker people to disappear so completely? Was it war, disease, or something far more mysterious? Share your thoughts in the comments below. When traces of the beaker people first appeared around the year 2800 BCE, their presence stretched from the Atlantic coast of Iberia to the rolling fields of Central Europe, and eventually all the way to the misty islands of Britain. Their spread was astonishingly rapid, suggesting either a massive migration or a cultural wave sweeping across the continent. Yet no one truly knows where they began. Some point to the Iberian Peninsula, others to the Rhine Valley, or even the Balkans. Wherever their cradle may have been within just a few centuries, they were everywhere. Artisans, warriors, and traders who seemed to rise from nowhere. Their pottery was their signature bell-shaped cups, often decorated with intricate zigzag or corded designs. But these were more than drinking vessels. They were symbols of status, used in rituals, banquets, and burials. The craftsmanship was so refined that each cup seemed to embody both function and faith, a blend of artistry and identity that defined the beaker way of life. Alongside their pottery, they introduced a new vision of the world, one where social hierarchy and individual prestige began to dominate community life. The beaker people were not merely potters. They were metalworkers, among the first in Europe to master the art of copper and bronze. They forged daggers, arrowheads, and ornaments that glittered like fire under the sun. These objects spoke of both beauty and violence, of a world where craftsmanship and conquest walked hand in hand. In their graves, men were buried with weapons and archery gear, women with jewelry and fine ceramics. The dead were placed in fetal positions, as if returning to the womb of the earth itself, facing the rising or setting sun in a gesture that seems to mix reverence with rebirth. But then something extraordinary happened, something that forever changed the genetic and cultural fabric of Europe. When the beaker culture reached the British Isles around 2400 BCE, it coincided with a massive genetic turnover. DNA from ancient remains revealed that up to 90% of Britain's Neolithic population was replaced within a few generations. There were no clear signs of war or genocide, no mass graves. Yet an entire people seemed to vanish, absorbed or displaced by these newcomers who brought new tools, burial rites, and ways of life. It was as if a new humanity had arrived, quietly rewriting the bloodlines of an island. Even more mysterious is their connection to Stonehenge. Archaeological evidence shows that the beaker people arrived during the final modification of that ancient monument. Some of the skeletons found nearby show distinct beaker ancestry. Did they rebuild the sacred site, continuing the traditions of those who came before, or did they claim it as their own? A conquered monument turned symbol of new power, Stonehenge, in its silent endurance, may hold the echoes of a forgotten encounter between two civilizations, one fading, one rising. For nearly a millennium, the Beaker people flourished. They forged extensive trade networks that carried copper from the Alps, amber from the Baltic, and gold from Iberia. They shared customs and artifacts that linked distant lands, creating one of the first truly interconnected cultures in prehistoric Europe. And yet around 1800 BCE, this mighty current suddenly went still. The Beaker culture, once vibrant, inventive, and dominant, disappeared. There are no written records to explain their fall, no monumental collapse carved into stone. One century, they are everywhere. The next, their symbols and traditions vanish beneath the layers of newer cultures such as Wessex and Urnfield. How could a people so widespread simply dissolve? Some scholars suggest assimilation, that the Beaker identity blended into those that followed. Others speak of environmental stress, a shift in climate, crop failures, or diseases that spread through their trading routes. Still others propose social breakdown, perhaps their once cohesive elite system fractured under its own weight. Whatever the cause, it happened quietly, invisibly, leaving behind only fragments of pottery and traces of metal. And yet the strangeness deepens. Unlike the dramatic endings of other ancient civilizations, floods, wars, or volcanic cataclysms, the Beaker disappearance was peaceful yet absolute. Archaeological layers show no sign of burning, no sudden destruction. Their settlements were not razed, they were simply abandoned. Their burial practices faded, their symbols ceased, their art stopped. It was as though a whisper passed through Europe, and when it faded, so did the Beakers. Genetic studies reveal something even more unsettling. While the people of Beaker ancestry continued to live on biologically, their culture, the very identity that defined them, ceased to exist. They became invisible in the archaeological record, their traditions overwritten by others. This has led some researchers to wonder, was the Beaker culture ever truly a people, or was it a shared ideology that could die even as its carriers lived? Imagine standing on the windswept hill in Britain, or the Rhine Valley, shards of Beaker pottery beneath your feet, copper tools glinting faintly in the soil. The people who once drank, traded, fought, and dreamed here are gone, not conquered, not destroyed, but dissolved into history itself. What event, what silent turning point could cause such a vast and thriving civilization to vanish without resistance? Could climate change have undermined their agricultural base? Could diseases carried along their vast trade routes have reduced populations to scattered survivors? Or was their decline more subtle, a loss of faith in the social and spiritual systems that once bound them together? Cultures do not only die from swords and fire, sometimes they fade from within when meaning itself slips away. The Beaker mystery stands as one of prehistory's most haunting enigmas, a people who rose swiftly, spread across Europe, and then vanished without a trace. Their pottery still rests in museums. Their DNA still lives in modern bloodlines, yet their voice, faith, and purpose are gone. They left no grand collapse, only silence, a fading echo through millennia. When we gaze upon their bell-shaped vessels and copper daggers, we see not just relics, but the quiet remains of a civilization that once defined an age before dissolving into the mist of time. And the question lingers, eternal and unanswered: what really happened to the Beaker people? When road workers in the quiet countryside of Dorset, England, stumbled upon a cluster of bones during a highway construction project, no one expected that the discovery would unveil one of the most chilling mass graves of the Viking Age. The site, located near Weymouth, would later be known as the Headless Viking Grave, a burial pit filled with decapitated warriors whose deaths remain shrouded in mystery. Even today, more than 1,000 years later, one haunting question still lingers above those bones. Who gave the order to behead them all, and why? Who do you think truly ordered the beheading of these Viking warriors? A king, a local lord, or their own comrades in a brutal, sacrificial ritual? Share your thoughts in the comments below. As archaeologists rushed away centuries of soil, what emerged from the earth seemed less like a burial ground and more like a massacre. Over 50 skeletons of young men lay sprawled together, all missing their heads. In a nearby pile, dozens of skulls had been stacked haphazardly as though discarded after a grim ritual. The arrangement was chaotic: bodies thrown into a pit, limbs twisted in unnatural poses, skulls separated as if their humanity had been erased. It was not the solemn order of a battlefield grave. It was a message carved into history with blood and steel. The site's position on a windswept hill overlooking the English Channel only deepened the unease. It was precisely the kind of place ancient rulers might have chosen to make an example of their enemies. And for the Vikings, those fierce raiders from the north, the English coast was both a battlefield and a graveyard. Detailed analysis of the bones painted a vivid picture of the last brutal moments of these men. Their neck vertebrae bore deep, clean cuts, the marks of sharp weapons like axes or heavy swords. Some skulls showed multiple failed blows, as though the executioners were inexperienced or exhausted. Most of the wounds came from behind, implying the victims were kneeling prisoners, not warriors in combat. Their bodies carried additional clues: scars of healed injuries, evidence of previous battles, muscular arms and strong leg bones from years of rowing longships across the icy seas. These were not peasants. They were trained fighters, professional raiders, or soldiers' men who had lived and died by the sword. At first, it was unclear whether these men were locals or invaders, but modern DNA and isotope tests provided an answer. Their origins pointed north to Norway, Denmark, and Sweden. They were Vikings. The finding immediately reframed the site. This was not an Anglo-Saxon massacre. It was an execution of foreign warriors, a group of Vikings captured far from home. Their lives ended not by glory in battle, but by the blade of justice, or revenge. In Viking culture, the dead were treated with reverence. A warrior slain in battle was sent to Valhalla, the great hall of the gods, his body burned or buried with weapons, armor, and symbols of strength. But the Weymouth pit held none of these things. No swords, no jewelry, no shields or coins. The bodies were naked, stripped of dignity, stripped of identity. The separation of heads and bodies wasn't just physical, it was spiritual. In Norse belief, to die decapitated was to risk losing one's soul, never reaching Valhalla. Whoever ordered this execution knew that. It wasn't just punishment, it was condemnation. The pit's location offers another layer of meaning. It sits near an ancient hilltop long associated with pre-Christian rituals and early Anglo-Saxon execution grounds. Such sites were often chosen to display the fate of traitors and enemies visible from miles away. The message was clear: any who dared invade England would meet the same end. Imagine the scene 1,000 years ago. The heads of Viking warriors mounted on spikes along the ridge, their blood soaking the soil, the waves crashing below. It wasn't just death, it was theater, a political spectacle of power. The dating of the bones, around 910 to 1030 AD, places them squarely within one of the most violent centuries in English history. The Anglo-Saxon kingdoms were under constant siege by Viking forces. Raids had ravaged coastal towns, monasteries burned, kings assassinated. But by the early 10th century, the tide had turned. English rulers were fighting back. During the reign of King Alfred the Great and his successors, England began reclaiming its territory. Executing captured Vikings in such a brutal manner may have been part of a wider campaign to intimidate the Northmen and end the cycle of raids once and for all. This is where the mystery truly deepens. No written record mentions this mass execution. No chronicler claimed responsibility. And so the question that has haunted archaeologists remains open: who commanded these deaths? Several theories have emerged, none conclusive. One theory points to King Ethelred, the unready infamous for ordering the St. Brice's Day massacre in the year 1002, when countless Danes were killed across England. The Weymouth grave, some argue, could be a fragment of that forgotten event. Others believe it was a local ealdorman or military leader carrying out royal orders to execute captured raiders after a coastal skirmish. The efficiency of the killings, dozens at once, suggests an organized, sanctioned operation. But a third, more unsettling hypothesis exists. These men may have been killed by their own kind. Perhaps they were deserters, failed invaders, or rebels punished under Viking law itself. In some Norse rituals, beheading was seen as a sacrifice to Odin, god of death and wisdom, a way to offer fallen warriors to the divine. If that were true, this pit might not be a crime scene, but a sacred offering. Still, the lack of any ritual pattern, no organized layout, no ceremonial items argues against this. Everything about the grave screams haste, anger, vengeance. Whoever gave the order wanted these men dead and forgotten. Reconstruction of several skulls revealed young, strong-faced men in their late teens and 20s. Many stood taller than 1.8 meters, rare for the time. They were in their physical prime, full of vitality, frozen forever in a moment of terror. Some skulls showed teeth worn from holding ropes or weapons. Others bore scars of earlier fights. These weren't random captives. They were seasoned warriors. To kill them all at once must have required immense power and a deliberate motive. Some scholars now suggest the group may have been Viking mercenaries who switched sides, fighting for English lords, then betrayed when peace broke down. Others see them as part of a failed invasion force, stranded and captured by local defenders. Whatever their story, it ended with betrayal. The execution wasn't just killing, it was erasure, an act designed to wipe out their memory. And yet, ironically, 1,000 years later, their bones still speak louder than any king's decree. In Viking mythology, a warrior's worth was measured by how he faced death. To meet death by execution, helpless and humiliated, was the worst fate imaginable. But perhaps as they knelt before their executioners, some believed this was not the end, that Odin still watched, that Valhalla's gates awaited. Archaeologists found no trace of panic or chaos in the pit, suggesting the men were calm, even resigned. Were they fearless, or had they accepted death as part of their destiny? Today, the site at Weymouth stands as both a memorial and a riddle. It embodies the savage complexity of the Viking Age, an era when faith, violence, and honor intertwined. For some, the grave is proof of English vengeance, the triumph of order over chaos. For others, it is a chilling reminder of how quickly civilization turns to brutality. Archaeologists have studied every bone, every wound, every inch of soil. Yet no science has uncovered the name of the person or the hand that signed the death warrant. And maybe that's the point history itself chose to forget. The headless Viking grave remains one of the most haunting archaeological discoveries, not for what we know, but for what we may never prove. It captures a moment when hatred wore the mask of justice, when power silenced compassion. 50 warriors, stripped of identity and denied the afterlife, now lie as silent witnesses of bone and earth. The Dorset wind still whispers through the hills, carrying one unanswered question: who ordered their deaths? Amid the quiet hills of Enshi Hubei Province, China, there lies a stone that seems to defy every law of geology and logic. Locals call it the UFO stone vanish, which means flying disc rock. At first glance, it looks like an ordinary boulder resting among the forested slopes. But as you step closer, its shape reveals something uncanny. A nearly perfect circular disc, symmetrical from every angle with a surface so smooth, it appears to have been forged by intelligent design rather than shaped by the random forces of nature. The first records of this stone date back decades, when villagers and hikers began to notice its striking resemblance to a typical flying saucer. Reports described a massive round boulder about 4 meters across and nearly 1 meter thick, slightly embedded in the ground. What fascinated people was not just its shape, but the way sunlight reflected off its surface as if it had been polished or machined, not eroded naturally. It looked too artificial to be real. When geologists visited the site, they were astonished. The rock was composed of ancient sedimentary layers, indicating that it was millions of years old. Yet these layers had been compressed into an unusually uniform, circular mass. There were no cracks, no rough edges, and most strikingly, it seemed to balance perfectly on a single contact point, as though someone had deliberately placed it there. Is Hubei's UFO stone a masterpiece of nature, or the relic of a civilization beyond Earth? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Here lies the heart of the mystery, in its impossible geometry. The UFO stone bears no resemblance to any naturally formed rock. Its precise symmetry mirrors the shape of the flying saucers described by eyewitnesses. In the 20th century, a raised central dome surrounded by a thin, even rim. Seen from above, it looks like a lens, from the side like an upside-down bowl. Its proportions are so exact, too perfect, too balanced, too smooth, that chance alone seems an inadequate explanation. When scientists measured its curvature, they found that its outer edges formed almost perfect concentric circles, deviating by only a few millimeters. These rings gave the impression of intentional craftsmanship, like the grooves of a vinyl record or the turbine blades of a jet engine. There were also fine, radiating lines etched across the surface, which did not match the patterns of natural erosion. Some geologists suggested they might be compression lines from sedimentation, but others disagreed, arguing that they were too uniform, more like machine cuts. Even stranger was its surface texture. Though made of sandstone and siltstone materials that usually erode unevenly, the surface of this rock is smooth to the touch, almost metallic. Under sunlight, it reflects a soft gleam, like polished steel. Locals often describe it as a giant metal plate fallen from the sky. Preliminary scans showed the stone contains a slightly higher iron content than nearby rocks. Though a minor detail, it fueled bold speculation. Could the object have been subjected to extreme heat or pressure, perhaps even fusion? If so, how could a natural process achieve such an effect? There is no record of volcanic or tectonic activity in the area that could explain it. Even more baffling, the UFO stone appears unnaturally balanced. Despite weighing many tons, it rests on a narrow point, as if delicately poised on an invisible axis. According to locals, the rock rotates slightly over time, turning a few degrees each year. No human interference, no earthquakes, no visible cause, and yet, after decades, its orientation has subtly changed. This spinning stone phenomenon has been documented through photographs taken years apart. Theories abound. Some say it's due to microscopic ground movement or thermal expansion. Others call it an optical illusion. But to the villagers and UFO believers, it's seen as evidence of something beyond human comprehension. Scientists have proposed several hypotheses, each opening another layer of mystery. One suggests it formed through wind and water erosion over millions of years, sculpting it into its circular form. But such precision, especially the raised central dome, has no known parallel in natural formations. Erosion produces randomness, not geometric perfection. Another idea involves concretion, the process by which minerals accumulate around a core, forming spherical or disc-like masses. While this could explain its roundness, it doesn't account for its flawless symmetry or metallic sheen. A third theory involves magnetism. Perhaps iron-rich minerals within the stone interacted with Earth's magnetic field during formation, compressing it into a disk. Yet magnetic readings around the site show no anomalies whatsoever. The mystery deepened when researchers attempting to extract small samples discovered the surface was far harder than ordinary sandstone, almost vitrified like glass. Could it have been exposed to intense plasma or heat, as if something once landed here, melting the rock into its current form? Naturally, such a strange formation inspired countless legends. Locals claim the UFO stone is a remnant of something that fell from the heavens, possibly an ancient spacecraft, buried over thousands of years. They also tell stories of mysterious sky fires, glowing lights, seen over the Enshi Mountains. Within UFO research circles, the Hubei UFO stone is often compared to the dropper stones of Tibet, circular stone discs engraved with spiral markings said to be relics of an ancient extraterrestrial civilization. Though the authenticity of the dropper stones is debated, their resemblance in shape has led some to believe they share a common origin, relics of a forgotten age of contact between Earth and beings from beyond. Another legend claims the stone harbors dormant energy within it. Some magnetic readings have detected slight, unexplained fluctuations, not enough for proof, but enough to keep the mystery alive. So far, no official geological study has conclusively explained the UFO stone's origin. Local universities have analyzed samples, finding the chemical composition consistent with regional sandstone, yet its physical structure remains anomalous. Skeptics argue the phenomenon is merely pareidolia, humanity's tendency to perceive order and meaning in random shapes. To them, this rock is simply a remarkable accident of nature, nothing supernatural. Still, even the skeptics cannot fully explain its perfect roundness and self-balancing form. If erosion created it, why don't other rocks in the same strata resemble it? Beyond science, the UFO stone has become a symbol of curiosity and wonder. It draws tourists, photographers, and researchers alike, all captivated by the possibility that it might be a message from a forgotten era. For some, it represents nature's perfection. For others, a clue to life beyond Earth. It also serves as a reminder that humanity still understands very little about its own planet. Whether a masterpiece of geology or a relic of something extraordinary, it compels us to ask, where does coincidence end and intention begin? What makes the UFO stone truly remarkable is not just its appearance or the theories surrounding it, but its refusal to be explained. Every answer opens another question. If nature created it, why does it look engineered? If humans made it, how and when? If neither, then what force shaped it into perfection? Perhaps the truth lies deeper, not beneath the stone, but within our endless human urge to seek meaning in the unknown. Today, the UFO stone rests quietly in the forests of Hubei, motionless yet somehow alive, catching the light of dawn and dusk. It has watched centuries pass while humanity spins stories around it. Whether a gift of nature or a relic of something unearthly, it stands as a silent witness to the unexplained, a reminder that even on our own planet, countless mysteries still defy our understanding. Perhaps it's not just a rock that looks like a UFO. Perhaps it's the universe's quiet whisper, telling us we still don't know everything.